All right, let's get it. Drive time Tuesday afternoon. 8 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It is a lovely, beautiful May Tuesday outside. About 77 degrees, clear and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you in the rearview mirror. Hope you had some time off like we did yesterday. Good to be back on air on this Tuesday afternoon. A lot has happened since you and I last spoke on Friday afternoon of last week. Of course, the NBA playoffs continue to roll along, both in the West and the East. The Oklahoma City Thunder are high speed ahead to not just the NBA Finals, but most likely an NBA championship. Just a heavyweight fight last night in Minneapolis. Saw OKC beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in a game where the Timberwolves really did a lot of good things. And we'll get into it, and we'll kind of preview what's next in the West. Of course, in the East, since you and I last spoke, the New York Knicks resurrected their chances for now to make this a series. I still have serious reservations about whether or not this thing is going to go more than 5 or 6 games, but we have a massive game 4 tonight in Indiana, where the New York Knicks will try to tie the series up at 2 games apiece after just a big boy win, man. That's what it was. It was a gutty win over the weekend where the Knicks were able to beat the Pacers 106-100 on Sunday evening. And now we march on to tonight to see how it may go. Indiana's a slight favorite. They're a 2.5-point favorite at last check. And, of course, they lead the series 2-1, so we go back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. If the Knicks can get it tonight, back to MSG, deadlocked at 2. So we'll get to the latest with the NBA postseason. We'll get to the latest with the NBA draft, as the Utah Jazz are just a number of weeks away now from making a couple of selections. Well, they have 2 first-round picks. They have 2 second-round picks. We'll see if they keep all 4 picks or if they decide to do something different than that. And then we'll get to some off-season stuff, because a lot of interesting potential targets for teams if they want to get aggressive, whether it's free agency or trades. And the Jazz are in the mix of teams that have a bevy of assets that might interest teams that need draft capital and clean books if they want to jettison some talent that hasn't worked. A big story out of the news of college football broke a few hours ago. Greg Sankey has announced that the SEC will be breaking away from the NCAA effective for the 2028-2029 academic calendar year. It's not that surprising, but to hear it and see it and understand that it's actually official is really jarring. This is a sport that continues to be ever-changing, almost on a day-by-day basis. It's hard to exactly know what it's going to look like just in a couple of months, let alone a couple of years. So we'll get to the latest out of the world of college football, OTAs in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is still playing possum. Apparently, he wants to retire a Packer. I don't know what that would look like. But ultimately, I still think he lands with Pittsburgh. So that's kind of a big story making the rounds today throughout the course of the news cycle. We have 4 Utah Mammoth players that are gold medal winners as the United States of America won the World Hockey Championships for the first time since 1933. A 92-year drought over. Clayton Keller, your captain, Logan Cooley, Josh Doan, all of them really big-time contributors. Again, Clayton was the captain of Team USA. Logan was second on the team in points. And gold medals around the necks of 4 Utah Mammoth players. Karel Vejmelka also was in the tournament. So we'll do a little hockey. Of course, the battle for Lord Stanley's Cup rolls on. In the world of professional hockey, we've got some more playoff hockey to get to with the Oilers taking on the Stars. Carolina actually was able to get one, but Florida, man, they might just win the whole thing. Stars-Oilers tonight at 6 o'clock in Edmonton. Edmonton leads that series 2-1. Stars will try to get even tonight. So we'll do the latest on the hockey playoffs as well. What did we ask of our local soccer club when we said goodnight on Friday? We asked for a goal. They gave us 2. The problem is the other team scored 3. And if I do some quick math, that equals another loss for RSL, a home loss for RSL to Vancouver over the weekend. And now we say goodbye to Diego Luna for at least a month and a half, if not more. And when the offense has been even kind of effective. About 90% of the time, it's included Diego Luna. This feels like a lost season. I don't know what else to say about it. Failures from the front office and the previous ownership. This is not on the Millers, so save your polls that you put out on social media. They just barely took over. But certainly Ryan Smith, Dave Blitzer, the previous ownership group who decided to not reinvest the funds they were able to snag as a result of moving on from some of the most talented pieces need to wear this, because I don't know if there's any way back for RSL. I think it's going to be a really, really long season without a lot of hope, quite frankly. So, local soccer club, local hockey club, local basketball team, latest in the world of college football. Of course, NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, OTAs in the NFL. A little bit of everything on this Tuesday afternoon edition after being off on Monday. So thank you for riding along with us on this beautiful day. Our first guest today, Rafael Barlow, who took over from our old friend Chad Ford, friend of the program, Chad Ford. Shout out Chad Ford. NBA Big Board podcasts, NBABigBoard.com. If you want to learn about some of the prospects that could be on the board at 5, Rafael's an excellent asset and resource for you. He's going to hop on right out of the gates today. Our buddy Lee Ellis to talk some NBA playoffs on the program. Richard Smith, 40 years with Utah Jazz front office, live in studio for an entire hour. And then voice of the Royals, voice of the Stars, host of the Round Ball Roundup podcast on the Utah Jazz Podcast Network, but most importantly, the former producer of this radio show. JP, John Paul Chunga, will stop by on a Tuesday afternoon. So good guest list today with a lot to get to with Rafael Barlow, Lee Ellis, Richard Smith, JP Chunga, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, on a Tuesday afternoon. I sent you the text, man. Don't let us get tonight. Don't let us get Game 4. Do not let us win Game 4. That's all I'm going to say right out of the gates.
Yeah. That would be more along the lines of how I feel, Spence, if I hadn't seen the Knicks lose the way they did in Game 1, right? If I hadn't seen the roller coaster that these playoffs have been, I would say that. But because of what I've seen, and because it's the New York Knicks, if we win Game 4, great. But that doesn't necessarily give me confidence we're winning the series. But it would put a lot of pressure back on Indiana. It gives the Knicks another chance at the Garden, and I think they get it done. So there's my take on that one.
You think they win tonight?
I do.
Wow.
All right. I do.
Okay.
And I think that, don't quote me, I think the Knicks are winning the series.
Oh, okay. Now you need to calm down. All right. When we were on the show on Friday, you were basically in tears. And now you think they're going to win the series?
I'm just trying to give you the life of a Knicks fan.
Okay.
It's up and down. It's very much a bipolar experience, and I'm just living it. And listen, it's the Eastern Conference Finals, man. How many times in my life, listen, I've lived now over a quarter century, and I've experienced this one time. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to lean in.
You should enjoy it. I mean, Game 3 was fun. Cat earned his Knick uniform and then did not have a New York accent after the game. I don't know what happened. He lost his New York accent after the game.
I need his urgency to be a little more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sometimes he just looks like he's it's not that he doesn't play hard. It just looks like sometimes he's not all there. And then he realizes, oh, I'm like one of the better players in the world. I have to turn it on. And then you see what Cat is. I don't understand why it's so off and on, but I guess that's the experience of being a Knicks fan.
Yes, indeed. So we'll see what happens tonight. I want to remind you guys that Live Night Events presents the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series. If you've not been to Granary, it rules. It's one of my favorite venues we have in the entire state. I believe camp is coming in a couple of weeks. I'll be there, so come by and say what's up. Powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Experience outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake's Granary District. Find more details on ESPN 700sports.com. All right, our first guest today, Rafael Barlow, to talk some NBA draft. But before we bring in Rafael on a Tuesday afternoon, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, or assists. Take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Starting with the play-in round, every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which can get you in a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 at checkout. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. Do you not even have to win that $5 lineup to get the $50? It's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. You will get $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. All right, tonight there are a couple of easy ones tonight. If you want to download the Prize Picks app, get that free money. I will take more on Miles McBride, 4.5 points. That means he has to hit a 3 and a 2. That's it. I'm going to take more on TJ McConnell as much as I want to wring that little dude's neck, 8 points. I'm going to take less on Andrew Nembhard, 11.5 points. I will go more on Jalen Brunson, 30 points. I think he's going to have a big game tonight. And then I'm going to go more on Pascal Siakam, 17.5 points. Shout out Prize Pick. Should be a fun game tonight. All right. Couple things here. We'll start last night. I like to be more reactive to something that just went down immediately, where the Minnesota Timberwolves probably beat almost every team in the league last night besides the team they were playing. So last night to me was far more about OKC than anything that had to do with the Minnesota Timberwolves, even though the narrative today and the conversation today has been surrounding Anthony Edwards and Ant's inability to kind of get space, inability to take more than 13 shots. I find that to be a fundamental misunderstanding of what happened last night, okay? So where I do think you can take a little bit of umbrage with Ant is what happened when he gave the ball up, okay? Because when he had the ball, they ran 2 defenders at him literally every time he drove. 100% of Ant's drives, he was double-teamed last night. And what Oklahoma City decided to do is not let Ant do last night what he did in Game 3, and that is get off early. So as soon as Ant caught it, you could tell that there was a shadow defender waiting to run at him right when Ant put the ball on the deck. They didn't double team on the catch. They double team on the dribble. Okay, so they would force Ant to pick up the dribble. Then he's in jail. And you can't just force shots to force shots. One of the things, and I love the inside guys inside the NBA on TNT. Love those guys. One of my favorite shows ever, okay? But ultimately, I remind people all the time, it is an entertainment product. And for how amazing they were at playing basketball, they're not great at breaking basketball games down. You'll get some salient points. Chuck is the man. Kenny is Kenny. Shaq has never said anything where I'm like, oh, that's smart. I should listen to more Shaq takes. But Kenny always says something like, I don't know if you're hot or cold unless you force, 18 to 20 shots if you're a great player. And to me, that's a fundamental flaw in analyzing what we saw last night. Because after the game, Ant was asked whether or not he thought he played poorly. And he said, no, I feel like I made the right play mostly every time. And you know what? He did. Because here's the deal. What Mark Dagnall did last night for stretches is he went small. He sat Isaiah Hartenstein. He played Chet at the 5. And then his 4 perimeter defenders surrounding Chet Holmgren as your rim-protecting long 5, and Chet's a very good rim protector, a very good shot blocker, a very good shot changer. He had 3 blocks last night, altered a bunch of others. And then on the perimeter, it's Lou Dort, who plays defense like a middle linebacker. It's SGA, who is 6'8". It's Jalen Williams, who's a first-team All-NBA caliber defender. And then you can kind of mix and match a little bit with Alex Caruso and Cason Wallace, both of whom are absolute pit bulls, okay? So on multiple possessions, and you can go back and look at some of this stuff on Synergy or Clean the Glass or whatever, there were dribble handoffs and different off-ball actions to get Ant the ball and then get him involved. And you saw Lou Dort suddenly pass him off to Jalen Williams. And then Jalen Williams passing Ant off to Alex Caruso. And then Cason Wallace blitzing screens to double-team Anthony Edwards. Like, those are 4/5, depending on who's the game at the time, absolute dogs on the perimeter when it comes to guarding. And their whole plan was Ant will not beat us, period, end of story, okay? Where I was a little bit disappointed is some of the off-ball action after Ant would give the ball up. because you still have the ability to get involved in the play. And if they're going to run you off your line, if they're going to blitz you every time, if they're going to double team every drive to force you to give it up to teammates, your only course of action is finding space off the ball. And Ant was not engaged because I think he was frustrated. I think he was tired. But the fact of the matter is, Minnesota scored 41 points in the fourth quarter on 54% field goal shooting against one of the best defenses of this generation. Last night was not about Ant. It was not about Minnesota. Minnesota was good. It was a good Rudy game. It was the best Dante DiVincenzo game of the playoffs. It may have been the best game I've ever seen Nickeil Alexander-Walker play, a guy who played here. Well, a guy who was on the team here. I never really fully understood why he couldn't get more run. But I don't know that I've ever seen Nickeil Alexander-Walker play like that. Again, best Dante game of the playoffs. You know, ultimately, and I'm not going to do the Randall stuff. You know how I feel about Julius Randle. Like, for the last 3 or 4 years, as the Knicks started to get a little bit better, whenever anybody would ask me, what do you think about the Knicks? I'm like, well, what do you think about Julius Randle as your number 2 offensive option when it matters? He's not a bad player, okay? And he's had some great playoff games this year, better playoff performances than we've ever seen. But for the second straight game, Julius Randle was watching on the bench in the fourth quarter because he was entirely unengaged. 1 of 7 from the floor. 5 points, 5 turnovers. Disengaged defensively. Like, it was a pathetic Julius Randle game. But what stood out more was Oklahoma City answered every punch Minnesota threw. Nickeil Alexander-Walker with his step-back 3, which he never does. Dante DiVincenzo, corner 3, money. Gobert causing problems in the paint. Not a great Mike Conley game last night, but Naz Reid came off the bench, gave him some good minutes. Like, ultimately, and Terrence Shannon Jr., who, by the way, was a hell of a college player at Illinois. He's kind of been a revelation for them. Minnesota was really, really good last night. But what you saw on the other side is simply this: a team that's ready. A team in Oklahoma City that's far more ready than anybody thought, including myself, based off their lack of track record of deep playoff runs. I just always have a tough time, and I always hesitate to anoint a team that has not had a ton of playoff experience together. And this group hasn't. But you know what? They're ready. Doesn't matter. I don't know if they grew up in the Denver series. I don't know if it's just a coach who completely has the pulse of his team and a personnel built by Sam Presti that has 11 or 12 players that can all really go. You know, Mark Daigneault has trimmed his lineup a little bit. He's mostly playing 9 guys. Isaiah Joe gets a little run here or there. The other Jalen Williams only came in last night to box out on the final possession. So this has really been an 8/9-man unit, but a team that has 11 or 12 guys that can all really, really play. And ultimately, we're watching the emergence of one of the top 2 or 3 players in pro basketball right now, and that is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, your deserving MVP, who has just understood exactly how to do what he wants to do, regardless of who the primary defender is. He can get to his spots. He understands angles. And yes, the falling down like you've been shot by a sniper when there's minimal contact is a little bit unappealing, but that does not put him in rarefied air. Like, he's averaging, I think, 8.4 free throws per game all year long. That's LeBron-ish. Like, that's Durant-ish. That's like ball-dominant offensive wing. You are in charge of making us go. And once you understand your angles, understand how to get to your spots, part of the skill set and the tool belt you need is to draw fouls, get the other team in foul trouble, get free points to expedite inefficient offense, get to the free throw line and get dunks and threes. Like, it's not that hard. But what SGA has learned how to do is dominate the game as an individual offensive initiator with a tool belt and a skill set that is totally complete. And he is 6'8", and he is built, and he is sturdy, and he guards. I think it's a corny group, I'm not going to lie. Like, there's stuff after the game where it's like, okay, if one person is interviewed, we're all going to stand here until the interview's over. Then we're going to walk in the locker room together. All right, nerds. And the dancing, the TikToks. Like, it's corny. I'm not going to lie. This is a corny group. It's hard to like them individually, but it's hard to deny and argue with their results because I really think Minnesota beats almost every team in pro basketball last night with the way they played and the game plan they had outside of Oklahoma City. And I just feel like it's time to say out loud, this team's going to win the NBA championship. I don't think Minnesota's getting back in this. It's 3-1. 92% of the time. I think, actually, no, it's 94% of the time, I believe, in the Western Finals, playoffs overall, that if you're up 3-1, you're going to win the thing. And I just don't think Indiana or New York has the depth or, quite frankly, the athleticism and the connectivity on both ends of the floor that Oklahoma City has right now. It's the best team in pro basketball. And if you're Minnesota, I think you hold your head high because you gave it your best last night, but you lost to the best team in the league. All right, we'll get to the Knicks-Pacers tonight. I would imagine that Tom Thibodeau, and by the way, thank you, Coach. On Friday, what did we ask out loud? Can you get 10 minutes from Landry Shamet? Can you get 15 minutes from DeLon Wright? Are you going to brush off Precious Achiuwa? Will you extend your bench a little bit so your starters don't look like they're dying at the end of the fourth quarter? And Tom did it. We saw former Ute DeLon Wright play a solid defensive 13 minutes. Landry Shamet, a solid defensive 13 minutes. Gamesmanship from Rick Carlisle after the game, saying it was hard because they were playing their best defensive players. The only player in the rotation that was not playing in the fourth quarter due to foul trouble was Jalen Brunson. And it's clear that Indiana wants to hunt Jalen as much as they possibly can. Mitchell Robinson got the start for Josh Hart. I give Josh so much credit for continuing to play his tail off. He's one of the most unique rebounding wings I think I've ever seen. And his rebounding was as important as anything else to that Game 3 win. He had 10 boards after coming off the bench. And the Mitchell Robinson thing works, man. It's real. He's playing really, really well when given opportunity. Karl Anthony Towns, 20 points in the fourth quarter. Without that spurt, they are dead. They were down 20 in the second quarter. I do think one of the more under-talked about dynamics is how they closed the second quarter to actually pull it within 13. And they got it done down the stretch, and it sets up a massive, massive game tonight. It should be great theater. And it's Knicks-Pacers from Indianapolis. Game 4, Indiana trying to take that 3-1 lead. The Knicks trying to even it up and send it back to the Garden. All right, we'll catch a quick break. Rafael Barlow stops by right off the top. We'll do some drafts. So we'll get to know some of these players that could be there for the Jazz at 5. And then Lee Ellis, Richard Smith, JP Chung, a busy Tuesday show. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Of course, NBA playoffs top of mind awareness right now with OKC taking a 3-1 lead over Minnesota and the New York Knicks attempting to even things up tonight against Indiana. That is a 6 o'clock tip. Turner has it for you tonight. It is on TNT. However, we are only weeks away from the NBA draft. We'll have great NBA draft coverage for you. I will anchor our coverage alongside Gordy Chiesa and Richard Smith, basketball lifers with Utah Jazz. Let's get to know some of these prospects now. It's been a minute, but Rafael Barlow, NBA Big Board, NBABigBoard.com, our guest on a Tuesday afternoon. Rafael, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm well. Appreciate your time. Simple question right off the top, okay? In your opinion, best case scenario for the Utah Jazz at 5 is which prospect and why?
Trey Johnson. Simple question for me. Trey Johnson led the SEC in scoring. I think this year's crop of teams in the SEC is the best group of teams we've ever had in the conference, and the number of teams that they got in the NCAA tournament reflects that. He led the SEC in scoring. He shot 39% from 3 on about 6 attempts per game, and a lot of those attempts were, heavily contested. It wasn't like he was getting open catch and shoot threes. He's a much better passer than he's given credit for. He can play off the ball. I think that Trey Johnson should be in range to go as high as number 3. So if he falls to Utah at number 5, I think you have your go-to scorer of the future.
Okay, so Trey Johnson, best case scenario, in your opinion, at 5, as you referenced, a lot of buzz around this kid over the past 3 or 4 weeks that indicate maybe he's not there at 5. So, Rafael, if we operate off the assumption and the premise that a team in the top 4 falls in love with Trey, secondary best case scenario for the Jazz at 5 if Trey is off the board?
That's where it gets tough because you look at Utah, and I've actually talked to some different scouts about the Jazz's roster, and you just need to really, really hit on one of your picks, and maybe not necessarily hit this year because there's a kid that's going to be playing in Pro Bowl next year. that's pretty dynamic, and AJ DeVance that could be available if this or next season is similar to this season. But with that being in mind, I've heard that Ace Bailey could fall. There's some teams that really like Common Maliwauch and his future as far as just being a rim protector and floor spacer and defensive anchor. Teams really like VJ Edgecombe. I like Jeremiah Fears. I think that he has the chance to be a star in this league, but Isaiah Collier was really good for Utah last year. What does that mean for Collier? You already have, based off of today, Clarkson and Sexton and Keontae. So I think Utah has a really, really difficult choice. But if Ace or Trey Johnson fall to them, that would be great. But other than that, I'm having a hard time about who could be the best option for Utah.
Is there any chance Edgecombe is there at 5? Any chance at all?
Yeah, I think so. I really think so. I just don't think that would be a good fit for Utah simply because is he, like a dominant scorer? Is he the type of player that's going to be able to knock down open jumpers? Is he a guy that's going to, like I said, be a creator off the dribble? I just don't know if he provides that. But I think he can be available. I really do.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if both Edgecombe and Trey are there at 5, you think the Jazz should go Trey?
No, without a doubt.
Oh, wow.
Without a doubt. Like I said, Trey led the SEC in scoring. And I know scoring isn't everything, but I think Trey is the better passer, the better shooter. He measured out a little bit bigger. And Edgecombe is good. People are enamored by the athleticism and what he did for the Bahamas national team last summer. But, Trey had a better year, and I think he's more ready to come in and contribute.
Is there any intrigue in your mind at 1 or 2, or is it simply, look, Dallas came out and said, look, we're keeping 1. Their ownership group said, Nico, you can't trade it. Okay, we're keeping it, and we're taking Cooper. So ultimately, Patrick Dumont, the owner, made the call, so we know Cooper's at 1. Any chance it's not Dylan at 2, or do you feel like it's a lock, both 1 and 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cooper is as much of a lock as you can get. Number 2, I'm not a betting man. I don't gamble, but I'd say I'm about 90% sure San Antonio would take Dylan Harper. Now, whether or not Harper plays a game for the Spurs, that's a different subject, because the fit isn't ideal when you figure that they just traded for De'Aaron Fox at the deadline, and then Stephon Castle, who really struggles to shoot, is at his best when he has on-ball reps. Then he really took off in the second half of the year when he had the opportunity to play with the ball in his hands. So Dylan is at best when he has the ball in his hands. I don't necessarily like the fit, but if San Antonio went with best player available, you go with Harper, then try to figure things out. But I think it would be enticing for a team like Milwaukee to possibly have their point guard of the future if and only if Giannis says that he wants to be moved. And I think San Antonio has some pieces to put together a nice package.
Do you think there's any chance the Jazz could move up in this draft and maybe entice San Antonio with 5, marketing, something like that? You know, because ultimately, Rafael, as you know, this is a fan base that really is looking for some hope, looking for a shot in the arm. It's an organization that needs some hope and a shot in the arm for the staff over there. And it's just been a very successful basketball team for the better part of 50 years that has been in no man's land. We're coming up on 4 years now. So, you know, all these reports and rumors out there that the Jazz are going to try to be bold and they're going to do what they can to utilize their assets, their draft capital, their clean books, and would be willing to move on for most anybody if it meant moving up to 2 and maybe grabbing a Dylan Harper. Could the Jazz be in play to move up to 2?
Possibly. I mean, I think maybe 3 would be a little bit more realistic, since Philadelphia, their timeline has to be win now. I mean, if you think about it, with Embiid and his health concerns and Paul George on the wrong side of 35, I don't know how you can make a deal work just, numbers-wise. But I would say 3 is probably the highest they can go. I don't know if San Antonio would make a move up for number 2, especially if they think that there's a chance that they can pair Victor Wembanyama and Giannis Antetokounmpo together.
Let me ask you about Ace. Let me dig in on Ace Bailey a little bit more, because there are some people out there, and look, there's so many, and we like what you do, and I was always a big Chad Ford guy, so we like having you on the show, and I read your stuff, but there are a lot of mocks out there, a lot of people out there that try to do what you do and others do, and a lot of them have Ace falling a little bit as a result of the combine measurements and such. So let's play a game a little bit, and let's say he falls to 5, and the Jazz are deciding that that's the direction they're wanting to go. I don't know if he'll be there. I don't know if they like him. But if it is Ace Bailey at 5, Rafael, tell Jazz fans what you think he can be as a professional when he's fully developed.
If he maximizes his potential, I mean, you're talking about a guy that is just able to score and score with the best of them. Still has a ways to go. I don't know why his stock would be dropping because he didn't measure out at 6'10". I've had people tell me, like, if you went to games and if you saw him, then you knew he wasn't 6'10". So why would his stock drop now? Because he didn't measure out at 6'10". But, I mean, in shoes, he's probably, 6'9" and a half in shoes, and you play the game in shoes. So I can't imagine his stock falling because of that. But if he puts it all together, I mean, he's had some games. I think he had a game where he was 13 of 15 from the floor. He had another game where he was 13 of 20. I mean, when he is going, he's just a guy that can just make some of the most difficult shots look easy. When he was guarded, I mean, he made 44% of his threes. It's just stylistically, I think some people are just not a fan of his heavy reliance on mid-range shooting, and then the mid-range is not considered the most efficient shot as far as just analytics. But if he puts it together, you have a guy that can rebound, that should be a weak side shot blocker, that can space the floor, and that could be a guy that when you need a bucket at the end of the shot clock, he can get you one.
I know that Cooper Flagg is going to be a Dallas Maverick and, of course, off the board at 1. And I think at the start of the college basketball season, maybe there was a bit of a debate, but he clearly, decided that debate on his own. Let me just ask you, you hear a lot of the Kawhi stuff. There are a lot of A lot of comps going around. Sometimes I don't love comps. I think it puts a bad idea in a fan's mind and sets a prospect up for failure. But are you among the people, Raphael, that believe that he's generationally special? And, do you think Dallas really has this superstar type talent that could be an all-star for 10, 15 years in the NBA?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the word generational talent is just up for debate. Like, I've had this conversation a few times. Like, is Kyrie Irving a generational talent? Is Anthony Davis a generational talent? Just throwing names out there that people have argued. I mean, I've even had people say Dwayne Wade isn't a generational talent. So I don't think Cooper has to be, quote unquote, generational to have like a special Hall of Fame type career. But one thing I will say about the Cooper Flag comps that I actually like is that this is probably the first guy that I've seen where it's like cross-racial comparisons. Usually a European is only compared to a European player and so on. And so I think, like, when it comes to comparisons, you have to have a wide range of comparisons if you're going to go that way. And I know that there are some teams that they make players or they make their scouts not only compare Europeans to Europeans or white players to white players or so on. So with Cooper being compared to everyone from Kawhi, I've seen AK-47, who you guys are obviously familiar with in Utah. I've seen some people compare him to Tatum. I just think nobody knows what he is because he has so many ways that he can impact the game. He can be a mix of a little bit of everything because he's such a good defender. He's a good passer. He shot the ball a lot better than anyone expected. I don't think anyone thought he was going to shoot 38.5% from three. But I do think he's going to be good. I think if he puts it all together, which I think he has a high floor. I mean, I see him as a multi-time All-Star. I just don't know if he's like your 1A. I don't know if he's your 1A on the championship team. But if he's your 1B, that's good. I mean, is Anthony Davis a 1A? I don't think so. But as a 1B, the Lakers won a championship. So I think Cooper could have a, multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA, All-Defense. So I just don't know if he's your closer, but I could be wrong.
Let me ask you, I've seen a couple of mock drafts that have Jeremiah Fears going to the Jazz at 5. And you brought this up earlier. It's a good point, and I honestly can't speak to it. I know that there are some in the organization that don't think Keontae George is going to be a rotational piece for a good player, for a good team in pro basketball. They like the Collier kid, but if your lead guard is shooting 25% from three in the NBA in 2025, you're probably not going to win a lot of games. So maybe on paper, you look at it and say, wait a second, they've got some young guards. I'm not sure they like any of their young guards an awful lot. So if it is Jeremiah Fears at 5, which some people are kind of prognosticating, what kind of prospect is he, Raphael?
He's a guy I really like a lot. I think my brother and I were probably the first to put him in the top 10 range back in December, and it sounded crazy back then. But he has the ability to consistently get 2 feet in the paint, which is something that Isaiah Collier was able to do with just his speed and his aggressiveness. But I think that with Fears, you have to look at how young he was. I mean, he's supposed to be at least either preparing for the prom or just finished going to the prom, but instead he's preparing for the NBA draft. He was the go-to guy in a tough SEC conference, like I mentioned earlier, not afraid of the moment, hit game-winning shot. But the intrigue with him is his ability to consistently get 2 feet in the paint. He can create his own shot. He's tough. He's competitive. And he just has a long ways to go as far as reaching his full potential. And I think for him, the sky's the limit for him. I think he could be one of the 2 or 3 best players in this draft that we're talking about 5 years from now.
Cooper Flagg's teammate at Duke, Con Knipple. The Malawach kid is intriguing, but the Jazz with Walker Kessler, I can't imagine they'd want to add Malawach next to Walker unless they're going to move on from Walker, which I don't think they'll do. He's extension eligible, and I'm hearing they will extend him, which I think is the right thing. But tell us about Con Knipple a little bit. Another name that has kind of been linked to the Jazz potentially at 5. And do you think 5 is too high to take Knipple?
Yeah, 5 is too high. I mean, I think at number 5, especially if you're a team like Utah, you're looking for someone that you think can be a franchise guy. Now, is it easy to get a franchise guy at 5? No, but I think you you're in a situation where you're not just looking for another connective piece. And I think for Khan, I think that's going to be his role in the NBA is as a connective passer, floor spacer, guy that competes. And the role that he played at Duke, where he wasn't the man, is going to be the role that he plays in the NBA, in my opinion. So I don't think five is. I think five is too high for him. I'll put it like that.
Yegor Demon, BYU point guard. There's like this undercurrent of fear that the Jazz are going to draft him at 5 because he's a BYU guy, and the Jazz owner also helps bankroll BYU basketball, as you know. It was interesting to watch him evolve this year. Oftentimes, he had a lot of trouble against pressure in the Big 12, and Kevin Young would play Dallin Hall against teams that would press because Yegor just couldn't really handle it. He's young, and this was his first experience playing really physical college basketball. The measurables are there. He can really pass it. I understand the combine stuff was a good look for him. Do you think there's any chance that he's in play at 5, and where do you think ultimately he lands and why?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance. I mean, Utah's had a small backcourt for the last few years. I do think there's a chance. I mean, everything that you mentioned before could be a factor. And I guess it just depends on how Utah sees him or sees his potential as a shooter. I've been following Yegor since he was 15 years old. I went to Madrid to watch him play. I've talked to him in person a few times. I really like him as a kid, and I could understand why a team can just fall for him. But the concerns are there about, like you said, how he handles pressure. And I literally just spoke to a scout from a team a couple hours ago, and he said, yes, Yegor probably helped himself with how well he measured and the fact that he shot the ball really well. But he said that the thing that everybody wants to see is how tough he is. Can he compete when there's smaller guards that are, just defending him like a Jose Alvarado? Can he bring the ball up the court against a Drew Holiday type defender? And the scout said that's something that you won't see in the pre-draft process because he's probably not going to go against anybody. He didn't play at the combine. So whoever drafts him is going to have to believe that the areas that he struggled with this year, whether it's the shooting or sometimes being assertive, that they can get the best out of him. But I do think it's realistic that he could be in play for Utah at 5, or maybe they trade down and get him. I'm not sure.
Jazz also have 21, and I'm not going to pin you to a name at 21. I'll just ask you, generally speaking, do you believe this draft is deep enough that some options at 21 could be intriguing enough? And, what's interesting, Raphael, is the better picks the Jazz have made ever since the ownership change and the front office change have been later on. Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier. We'll see what happens with Taylor. He's hurt, but obviously it was a rough look for Cody last year. No one's anointing or dismissing based off of 1 year in the NBA, but this is a front office that's shown the ability to find some things in the 20s. Generally speaking, what sort of talent would be there at 21?
Yeah, there's a player that I really like for Utah, and that is a Greek prospect named Neoklis Abdalis. I've been higher on him than the consensus. I think that if he would have went to college this year, we'd be talking about him as a lottery pick, similar to Yegor Demon and Kaspar Jakachonis and some of the other international players. He just didn't have the opportunity. He didn't go to college. And then Ben Saraf and Noah Senge are playing in Germany, but they're playing on a team that gives young players the opportunity. And most European teams really don't give young players an opportunity. Everything is win-win now, and they think that it's better to win with veterans. So with that being said, Abdalis is 6'8". He's a good passer. I think he's one of the better athletes in this draft as far as the guard position. Plus, he has positional size. He played well at the combine. He knocked down open shots, but he didn't really have the opportunity to play much with the ball in his hands. So at 21, I think for him, if he is a point guard, then you got a 6'8" point guard. But if he's not, because of his size and his ability to shoot, it gives you some flexibility into how you can use them. And with all that being said, if he does end up going the college route, which we may find out in the next couple of days, I think he ends up being a lottery pick. So if you can get him at 21, you get a steal, another steal for the Jazz later on or outside of the lottery.
All right, Raphael, last thing and I'll set you loose. You referenced his name earlier, and everything I've seen, every time I've watched A.J. Debonsa play, I'm just like, oh, my gosh. Like, I'm not sure that BYU fans know what they have down there. I'm not sure that in-state college basketball fans are ready. He might be the best player that we've ever had here, certainly as a talent. It's hard to argue with any of that. We've never had a top, 5 or even 1 recruit play at either the University of Utah or BYU. And we had Dame Lillard here, so let's put respect on Dame and Andre Miller and Jimmer Fredette and everyone that's played here in the state. I could keep going. But for basketball fans that are curious but not familiar, just what kind of player is BYU getting in A.J. Debonsa?
Well, you have Van Horn, right?
Yes, certainly Keith Van Horn should be on that list. Like I said, I could keep going, but I'm not sure that Keith had the talent A.J. did, and I think Keith himself would probably admit that.
Yeah, well, Keith went pretty high. Was number 2?
Number 2, yep.
So, AJ's special. He's special. He's got the ideal positional size, the athleticism, the shot making. He was really good his senior year, but I felt like he was a little bored. I mean, he had been dominating high school since he was a freshman, and I think that having a new challenge of college basketball, I think that's going to bring something else out of him that we haven't consistently seen. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting for the fans in Utah and BYU fans. I think that he has a really, really good shot at being the number 1 pick. But there's 2 other guys in this class that are special, next year's class, and Darren Peterson and Cameron Boozer. And Jazz fans are familiar with the name Carlos Boozer, and Cameron is Carlos' son. But AJ is right up there as far as, in my opinion, the best prospects to come out of high school in the last 10 years. And I think that it's going to be a year similar to when Zion Williamson was in college basketball, even with 22 when you had Ben Carroll and Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith, where teams felt like if they get one of those guys that they're going to be a playoff team within year 2 or 3. And I think if Utah does get AJ, then I think that's the franchise guy that you are hoping for. And it could also be a great consolation. Is probably not the best way to use it, but I do think that AJ could be better than Cooper Flag. So it could be a blessing in disguise if AJ ends up being the number 1 pick in 2026 and Utah's number 1 and they miss out on Cooper Flag in 2025.
A lot of Jazz fans curious about these prospects, Raphael. Where can they go get all your work?
You can find me at NBABigBoard.com. It is my newsletter. I try to put out an article 2 or 3 times a week, but then I have my podcast, NBA Big Board. It's on the Locked On Network, and I have a podcast that I do at the least 5 times a week, sometimes even more. So pretty easy to find.
All right, man. Thanks for the time. Good stuff. We'll get you back soon, okay?
No problem. Anytime, let me know.
Raphael Barlow, the NBA draft is a matter of weeks away, June the 25th. We will have you covered here on ESPN 700. I will be anchoring our coverage alongside Gordy Chiesa and Richard Smith, and there's a chance we're going to be out and about. So if you're a Jazz fan looking to hang out, grab some dinner, some drinks, what have you, and watch the draft, do it with us here on ESPN 700. Raphael stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you'll put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn, and you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program, everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go here on this Tuesday afternoon edition of the program. Our buddy Lee Ellis stops by coming up on the other side. We got Smitty live in studio and JP a little bit later. JP Chung, a lot to do on a Tuesday drive. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. We got Smitty live in studio today. Thought we'd do that on a Tuesday to get you ready for Knicks Pacers tonight. Look back on OKC's win over Minnesota. We'll do some Jazz off-season basketball with Smitty. Spent 40 years in the Utah Jazz front office. Now good enough to give us some time. JP Chunga, voice of the Royals and the Stars, host of the Roundball Roundup podcast, will join us later on. But Tuesday afternoon, more NBA basketball with one of our favorites, Lee Ellis, ESPN Australia, head of Global Pickup. But, Lee, quite frankly, I don't mean to make you feel awkward or uncomfortable, a little bit of a pioneer. I don't know that I've ever really talked to you about this. You were among the first podcasters covering NBA basketball. Is that a fair statement?
Well, somewhat, yes. I mean, I wouldn't say I was the pioneer. I think that really title goes to Skeets, Tass, and JD, because they created a podcast before even I knew what a podcast was. But I certainly did come in and ride their coattails for a while there, and we began the show on NBA TV back in 2013. So, I wouldn't say I was the number one draft pick in that sense. I'd say I was a free agent signing. But I certainly like to feel that I made a contribution to the show. And, now it's amazing how many people, in fact, just today, here I am in Indianapolis, a guy came up to me on the street and he said, "Man, I remember you from the Basketball Jones days in Toronto." So that was kind of freaky to sort of still hear that just out on the street because, that was at a different time. I think, I don't think when the guys originally started it, not even Twitter or Facebook or anything like that even existed. And they were doing a podcast and they've grown it into something that continues today. And in fact, I believe it's going to be 20 years in January from when Skeets, Tass, and JD did their very, very first podcast back in JD's, the basement of his house, I think it was, back in 2006 in Toronto. So it's quite remarkable how, our journeys, everybody's journey is slightly different. But yes, the seeds of where I am today were planted in Toronto about 15 or 16 years ago for myself.
What was the name of the pod you guys had on NBA TV? Was it No Dunks? Was it the Starters? I honestly can't remember what the name of the NBA TV pod was.
Yeah, we were the Starters on
Starters.
NBA TV, and
okay.
that was a TV show and a podcast. But we did that for 6 seasons, and it was honestly one of those sort of pinch me moments literally every day. In fact, I remember saying to my wife, like, I can't believe on NBA TV, wearing plaid shirts, talking to my friends about basketball, So one day Shaq came in while we were recording, got me in a headlock, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to anybody. People would ask me, like, how do you get on NBA TV? Like, that's a cool job. And I'm like, I can't really tell you because I don't know. There wasn't like a blueprint that I followed. It was just a few things happened, and the next thing I know, I had the biggest man in the world get me in a headlock on TV. So it's crazy.
It's funny, man, because look, I'm a basketball sicko like you are, and so I watch NBA TV, and I can remember watching back in the day, and I was watching just some recap or highlight show, and they're like, hey, don't forget tomorrow at whatever time, tune in to the Starters, a basketball podcast. I'm like, wait a second, what is this? I don't even know what any of this is. And, now everybody has a podcast. We podcast this show, and if you're in the ecosystem of media and sport, period, chances are if you don't have a standalone pod, you pod your live show like we do here. And would you characterize it as something that was kind of like beyond anything you dared to dream about as far as how you got into it? I always find it interesting to hear the origin story of how people were able to carve out their piece of real estate in this ecosystem that's really hard to find real estate in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way of putting it because, again, no one really knew what it was or what it was going to become. And I remember, again, in the early days speaking to those guys because they had normal jobs, Skeets, Tass, and JD, who I'm referring to here. So they would record their pod at like 6 o'clock in the morning over Skype, put the podcast out there, then go about their daily jobs. And so there was no money in it. They weren't like sitting back rolling in money. They had to put all their own money and time into it. And JD had just become a father. And they were just trying this thing that no one really knew what happened. But because at the time, Apple iTunes, I think it was still called then, people from around the world started listening to it because basketball is such a global sport. And that encouraged the guys and it inspired them to keep going. And eventually they made it to The Score, which is an independent sports TV network in Toronto. And from there, NBA TV got hold of it and moved us all down to Atlanta. And, so again, the story itself is sort of, even when I'm saying this to you, and I've said this on numerous podcasts over the years, I'm sort of like, man, it's amazing how many things just have to sort of line up and be ready to go. And, getting visas even to come and work in America is not easy as well. We have to somehow convince the immigration lawyers that we were, worthy of getting work visas and things like that. And then I remember again that, when we were doing a podcast in Toronto, there was no time limit. So, you can go for an hour or an hour and a half or whatever. But then we came to the NBA TV and we had a 44-minute show daily that we had to hit. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God, this is like crazy. You can't be as loose on TV. You certainly have to dress a little nicer. You have to be a little more, professional in how you approach it. You certainly can't swear and things like that you can on a podcast. So it was a real adjustment. But I think we all got motivated and inspired by so many people who saw us as non-former players, just fans of the game, trying to bring an entertaining angle to it. Like we never claimed to be former pro players or anything like that. We were just guys who, started something new that grew into a TV show. And our love for the game is what so many people around the world, I think, could relate to and connect with.
And I think it's really cool, man. I always applaud people that have the courage to just try stuff. Like, we love this, so let's go try it. Let's see what it turns into. Let's give it some effort. Let's give it some, some real energy and resources. And, stories like that are really cool. All right. Let's, before we get to Knicks Pacers tonight, I said this earlier, Lee, I want to see if you agree. I think Minnesota last night beats almost every team in the NBA, except the team they played, right? Like, and there's a lot of conversation today about Ant this and Julius Randle that, and certainly there's some things that we can get into that are probably fair. I thought last night was far more about who Oklahoma City is as opposed to who Minnesota is not. I was quick to be a little bit skeptical about OKC's ability to run through the playoffs only because we haven't seen it before. But in a vacuum, last night was an incredibly entertaining basketball game. And I think if you're Minnesota, you're just kind of like, they might be better than us and everybody else. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, and I think, what you've seen with the Thunder is they were the number one seed by a mile in the Western Conference, whereas the Wolves were the sixth seed. So any other season, if you had the 1 versus the sixth seed, the number one seed should win fairly comfortably. Now, Game 3 was that season on the line type of response from Minnesota, and you could almost see Oklahoma City kind of let go of the rope there a little bit once it got out of hand in the second half. But then they regathered and regrouped and sort of showed last night. They flexed their muscles a little bit more, saying, like, hey, we are better than this team. They have got a few vulnerabilities, and I think they exposed them last night. And I have to give a lot of credit to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because, he's almost gone to that point where he was a big fan favorite, and now people are starting to turn on him, criticizing him for the free throw embellishment, whatever that really means. But he's gone out there and led his team, and he's handled everything. And I put a lot of it actually back into that Denver Nuggets series as well, where they looked bad against the Nuggets at times. But as really good teams do, they get the job done. And I think that's important. I think that does sort of build you up and get you ready for the next round. Whereas the Timberwolves, I mean, when you have a win like that, I think it was 42 points in Game 3, it's almost like too much. They didn't have to fight. They didn't really have to do everything. They just sort of, everything they threw up went in. But it wasn't like they had something really solid to fall back on because last night they kind of got exposed a little bit. And Anthony Edwards, I heard what he said after the game because he's been criticised for not taking enough shots. He said he made the right plays. Maybe he did. I think there is an argument there. But you also expect your star to sort of say, well, a bit like Karl Anthony Towns here in Indiana on Monday night, or Sunday night, where he was like, right, I'm putting my team on my back and we are not losing this game. And I didn't really see that from Anthony Edwards. Like, he didn't go down fighting. He played well enough, but it wasn't the sort of epic performance where you thought, man, he left it all on the table there last night. I think he had a little bit more in the chamber, and we'll see now. They obviously go to a must-win game in Oklahoma City. But, and there's people saying, oh, man, Oklahoma City, the NBA doesn't want that. Well, I'm the opposite. I think this is great for the league. I think there's a bit more parity, there's a bit more evenness, and every team is a chance. And we're seeing that with, we're likely to get Oklahoma City and Indiana in the finals. I'm fine with it. I think these both fun teams to watch. I love watching the young stars emerge. And I think we're set up for a really, really fun finals, however it turns out, because the other one is maybe we get Minnesota versus New York, who, of course, had that incredible trade right before training camp started last season. So that would be a fun way to cap the season as well. But I think no matter what happens, people are going to criticize the league and criticize the game and things like that because that's the nature of social media these days. But as a fan and as an analyst, I'm really enjoying it.
So let's dig into the Ant stuff for a minute because, Game 3, he comes out of the gates completely on fire. And certainly, if you want to say more engaged in Game 3 out of the gates, I guess I can concede that point. But what I saw last night from Oklahoma City is Mark Dagnall elects to move off of the Hartenstein stuff. He puts Chet in at the 5. He goes small. And then on every dribble handoff, on every pick and roll, on every off-ball action, you have, first of all, Lou Dort, who plays defense like he's a middle linebacker. Jalen Williams, who's like all-NBA defense caliber. Shea, who's 6'8". And then either Alex Caruso or Cason Wallace that are both just absolute dogs on the perimeter. And they blitzed Ant on every single pick and roll. 100% of his drives, he was double-teamed. Every time he put the ball on the deck, they ran 2 defenders at him. Lee, I don't know what you do if you're Ant, because they're just like, you go back and watch it, there's no room for him to get his shots off. And he did make the right play, I thought, more often than not. And his teammates did knock down shots. So, you hear the inside guys like Kenny always talks about, if you're one of the great players, I need you to take 18 to 20 shots, then I know kind of where you're at. And if those shots are forced in the face of 2 and 3 defenders, they're not high-quality looks. So what was Ant kind of supposed to do when the OKC game plan was clearly, we are going to throw 2 of these dog defenders at him every time he gets the ball, and we are going to make other players beat us, and they almost did because they scored 41 points in the fourth quarter against one of the best defensive teams that we've seen in a long time. I'm just not sure what Ant was supposed to do last night in the face of that game plan that was designed to take him entirely out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and it's a fair way to sort of analyze it because, we always sort of say, like, we want the guys to step up and make the big play, and that doesn't necessarily mean make the big shot. I guess, though, from what I saw, he had a couple of those drives where he went inside fairly quickly. Now, if the double is coming, then maybe that's on the coaching staff there of Chris Finch, but it's also maybe on Anthony Edwards to get into that action a little quicker to try to beat that double or, see if you can get a switch to get a defender that you prefer to have there. I mean, it's always, we're all Monday morning quarterbacks after the game and we can, analyze and criticize and things like that. But he had a couple of moves because he is so athletic and he is so fast that he can cruise inside to me, seemingly at will. But last night he did it a couple of times, but then he sort of hesitated. And again, maybe the leadership from him is like, I don't want to have to do it all myself. I want to show trust and faith in my teammates. Again, there's no real right answer because if he has one of those games where he goes for 45 points or 50 points or something like that, then maybe people will criticize him anyway and say, hey, you've got to trust your teammates more. But it's a tough one. I mean, I remember Jason Tatum's, unfortunately, his last game of the season in New York City against the Knicks, he had 42 points and he was carrying his team, putting them into a spot where they were going to win the game. Now, they ultimately didn't. But what I saw from him was a leader who was like, I know these other guys can do it, but tonight I'm going to step up and do it. And he was on the way to doing that before he unfortunately got injured. So there's always, again, it's always easy to look back, I think, and sort of pinpoint things and say, he should have done this, he should have done that. Either way, I think Anthony Edwards will learn from last night's game and we'll see how it plays out in Game 5 and not just for this season, but beyond, because I truly think he has got that elite level competitiveness in him and ultimately he'll become better for it.
Before we move out east, a thought on Julius Randle, who in fairness has had the best spring that he's ever had as an NBA player. As a Knick fan, I can speak to it. I always was skeptical of the way the previous Knick team was built, only because Jalen's awesome, but if your number 2 offensive option is Julius Randle, you're going to run into games like we've run into over the past 2 where he is watching from the fourth quarter. Like he's watching from the bench in the fourth quarter. And I just, for all the Ant stuff, I'm looking at Julius 1 of 7, 5 points, 5 turnovers. And the problem with Julius Randle, this has always been the deal. If he's not scoring, if he's not involved offensively and making shots, he's just not as engaged defensively And we saw it last night. So what's your take on what we've seen from Julius Randle over the past couple of games?
Yeah, well, I mean, go back to those first two games in OKC, and he was really aggressive from the start. They're almost like he was like, okay, I'm going to show the years of my experience here, because he was hitting threes and he was aggressive and going for a shot. But certainly that has been the criticism of Julius Randle throughout his career, where some nights he looks like an all-NBA caliber player. And other nights, like last night, he does seem to be sleepwalking a little bit more. And I think that consistency is tough for a lot of players, because you have those good games and then all of a sudden things aren't going your way. What do you have as a backup? When do you go to plan B? And Julius doesn't really seem to have that. Whereas, you would like to see him go inside again, maybe try to draw some fouls, get some high percentage looks, whatever it is. If the three's not falling, if the mid-range is not falling, have something else there in your bag. And at times he does. But again, it's a little bit frustrating, because there are times where it just seems like he's just not focused on the game. And again, last night was a must-win, really, for the Wolves. I mean, obviously they're still statistically in it, but for all intents and purposes, they're going to lose in 5 games here. And it was just a frustrating way, because I thought, even though it was close last night, I always felt that the Thunder were in control. And I think, that was sort of reflected in the score in the end. The Wolves gave it everything, but ultimately they just didn't have that same aggression that they had, in Game 3, which got them that huge win. And, the Thunder were able to sort of overcome that, like a pretty embarrassing loss there, and they were able to bounce back a lot quicker, whereas it was almost like maybe the Wolves thought all their work was done. Who knows? But, we'll see. The playoffs this year, and every series seems to be a little bit crazy. So there is a chance, if you sort of think about it, that the Wolves could still extend this series and get themselves back into it. But I think they probably blew their chance last night.
All right, before we get to tonight, Sunday's game in Indiana, I was ready to turn it off in the second quarter and ready to say, okay, this is a sweep. The Knicks go down 20. One of the more under-talked about dynamics of Sunday, Lee, in my opinion, is the way New York closed the second quarter to get it down to 13. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when they went down 20 and Halliburton gets the steal, there's a dunk, it just felt like there was no way back. Even though the Knicks have come back from down 20 points a couple times against the Celtics, the Pacers just felt like they were built differently. When Nesmith hurt his ankle, that changed the scope of the game. On Friday, I said a couple of different times, can Tom Thibodeau find 10, 15 minutes for Landry Shamet, for DeLon Wright, even Precious Achiuwa, who did not play? And he was able to find some minutes for some of his bench players, and Jalen was in foul trouble. So, of course, he was limited as far as his minutes go, which I think is good, because the starters didn't look like they were dying down the stretch in Game 3, because he was able to get some rest. Cat has that stretch at the start of the fourth that reminds you like how special he is when he's engaged. But your main takeaways with how New York came back from that deficit and got it done on Sunday?
Well, it was quite interesting, because TJ McConnell had a press availability yesterday, and he was asked, did you guys maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit when they were up 20 with about 7 minutes to go in the second quarter? And he said, subconsciously you do. You sort of feel like you got the game in hand a little bit. And then the Knicks made a little push to get it close at halftime. And then it was still about double digits going into the fourth. And it felt like then Karl Anthony Towns had 4 points and 4 rebounds. It's like, man, the headlines are not going to be kind to him tomorrow. It's like this guy has not stepped up. And instead, he went out there and delivered one of the best performances, not just for the fourth quarter, in about a 7-minute stretch there where he had 20 points and 8 rebounds, hit the big threes, and most importantly and most impressively, he attacked the rim too. He went at Miles Turner. He had a huge and one dunk. He had another layup where he just went straight at Turner and said, you're either going to block me or I'm getting a basket here. And both times he turned it into a 3-point play. And so we know that is what Karl Anthony Towns is capable of. And it took basically the Knicks season to be on the line there for him to bring it out. And so now I'm really excited to see the game. I'm going to be heading to the arena in about half an hour or so here, because I really want to see if Karl Anthony Towns starts the game like that. And if he comes out and he says, hey, I am the best player out there, and these guys can't defend me one-on-one. And I want to see him put his team in a position where they don't have to come back from 20 points down. They don't have to sort of be in that position where it's like, okay, all or nothing right now. Instead, have some sort of a comfortable game, because I think that's what the Knicks and Karl Anthony Towns are capable of. we just don't see it consistently. But that was another remarkable game. I mean, Jalen Brunson was in foul trouble. He had 4 in the first half. Towns is often in foul trouble. Landry Shamet came out, gave them a decent little stretch there, hit a couple of baskets. And DeLon Wright, another guy, another vet, I think he can handle the possessions better than Campaign anyway for a few minutes. And so Tom Thibodeau, he obviously mixed up the starting lineup as well. He went with Mitchell Robinson. He changed things. Now, it didn't necessarily work straight away because they were down to 20, as we discussed, but they got the win. And so now I'm really fascinated to see, does Tom Thibodeau now go a little deeper into that bench, and not necessarily with more players, but give those guys like Shamet and Wright a little bit more trust and a little bit more time to save the legs of guys, you know, like Bridges and like Brunson, who have just played heavy minutes, because I think that's the only real way the Knicks are going to survive and extend this series. They've got to get a few more guys, a few more minutes, and hold up their end of the bargain, because the Pacers, who may be without Neesmith tonight, it hasn't been announced yet, they can ride a loss like that because they already play 9 or 10 guys. And I know Rick Carlisle has some guys like Ben Shepherd who can come out there and play some really good minutes. So the Knicks saw something, I think, in Game 3, and now we're going to be really interested to see if Thibodeau sticks with that in Game 4.
They were plus 12 in the 17 minutes without Jalen and minus 6 in the 31 minutes which he played. That's, of course, not an indictment on who Jalen Brunson is as a player, but it does make you curious about some of the defensive potential with some of the other lineups. Rick Carlisle, with his gamesmanship, of course, has made a couple of comments that have been somewhat interesting. But before I say you lose, Indiana's a 2.5-point favorite tonight. If Neesmith can't go, my guess it's Ben Shepherd, who's been solid as a perimeter defensive player and a guy that can knock down threes as well. So before I set you loose, do you have a lean? Do you have a lean as far as how you think we're going to see it go tonight?
It's a pretty good line. I favour the Pacers because, again, I think they were somewhat embarrassed how they lost Game 3, and they know they stole home court advantage, which is great. But the worst thing is if you have home court advantage and you give it back. So I think they know that, you know, Game 5 is going to be tough no matter what in New York City, that we know we're going there. I think the Pacers want to make sure they take care of business tonight because they don't want to get into a situation where the Knicks potentially turn this around and get up 3-2, because we know Game 7, if it goes that far, would be back in New York City. The Pacers won there last year, of course, but again, every season, every series is different. So I think the Pacers are okay tonight, but I think it is going to be a pretty tight one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I think both teams are going to try to keep it a little bit slower than normal and just keep it tight. So I'll take the Pacers. I think they probably do cover, but not by much.
Where can people go find your work, Lee, and follow along with the journey?
Yeah, just Lee Ellis on all the social channels there, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LEIGHELLIS. And, I'll be at the arena tonight, so I'll be sharing what I see behind the scenes and all that good stuff.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the game. We'll chat soon, okay?
Cheers, Spence. Thanks for having me.
Lee Ellis, old school podcaster, legend as far as NBA podcasters go. He is in Indianapolis for the Knicks and the Pacers tonight. At Lee Ellis on social, as he referenced, stops by today courtesy of our friends at Cortland Roofing. They're your re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience. Here's the deal. If you look at the forecast, it is going to be hot this week. Unseasonably hot. 90-degree weather late in the week throughout the weekend. So if you need your roof repaired, if you've been putting it off, it's a great time right now to call Cortland Roofing because you're going to save a grip of money, thousands of dollars. Okay, so with a free roof repair, you get free rain gutters. Okay, now if you don't need the rain gutters, they're going to knock that price off the total price to replace the roof. So you either get free rain gutters or, essentially a good deal to replace the roof altogether. Savings of thousands of dollars. Get it done before the weather gets really warm with Cortland Roofing and save a grip of money right now by calling 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, we got Smitty coming up. Richard Smith live in studio. We'll do some jazz. We'll do some draft. We'll do some NBA playoffs. JP, John Paul Chunga, is going to join us a little bit later on as well. We'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program, and we'll say goodnight at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 792 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Richard Smitty Smith is back on the drive on ESPN 700, live in studio. Smitty, happy Tuesday, my friend. How are you, sir?
Man, I am doing a good, Spence. I had a good weekend. I had the opportunity to play a little golf, starting the long weekend on Friday with an all-star foursome that included you right at the top of the chart, and Tim Howells and Wesley Ruff. That was a fun day for me. And then, of course, the rest of my weekend went downhill, because when you start right at the top of the mountain and you're hanging out with like the Mount Rushmore of Salt Lake City sports scene, and then you have nowhere to go but downhill. That's what it was like for me.
The Mount Rushmore of the Salt Lake City sports scene. Me, Tim, and Wes Ruff.
There you go. Well, hey, you guys are right there. You guys are right there, right?
Okay.
They're still carving it.
Sure.
It's still going on.
Sure.
Now, I imagine somehow, soon President Trump will fit in there somewhere, because apparently he wants to be in all the stuff. But anyway.
Sure.
But yeah.
Sure. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
No, hey, Spence, you are playing well. For all of our listeners who hear you talk about golf or going out hack or whatever, you have a very nice swing, and you can really tag the ball when you get a hold of it. Now, I liked on I think it was 16 at Bonneville, we were in the middle of the fairway, and you had a nice, I don't know what it was, 180 or something, and to the green, and you hit it, and the thing just took off.
Yeah.
And none of us knew where it went,
Mm-hmm.
and we just saw it fly over the trap and over the trees and over the next tee box, and then it disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at each other like, that ball must have gone like 220, 30 yards or something. I don't know where it went, but
Bad club selection by me. Sir,
I turned to you, Spence. I don't think you heard me when I said, Spence, they moved the green.
Yeah.
It's over here. It's over here.
Yeah.
It's
and a par 5, too. I blew it. So I put it over the green, had to drop. Was able to get up and down, which was nice. But great to see Tim Howells. I haven't seen Tim in a long time. It was fun to see him.
Tim is a very good golfer. He's been playing all his life. And Tim, he really gives back. He's been involved for a lot of years with the First Tee program here in Utah that helps young kids get involved with the game of golf and exposing them to the game early on. And Tim's been a big proponent of that and the head of that for a while as well. And is still active in that. And it was good to hang out with him on a golf course. And
for our listeners that may not be familiar, Tim was the general manager of the Jazz for a few years.
During the decade of the 90s.
Yeah.
He was there for 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
90 to 2000 and during the so-called heyday. And when the Jazz finished their run and had won more games than anybody in the NBA during that 10-year run, Tim called a meeting and said, boys, that's all I can do. And, it's up to you. I'm out of here. And walked out the back door.
Yeah.
And then, I'm teasing Tim on the air, but he did a great job for us, for the organization, all those years he was involved.
Yeah. So shout out to Tim Howells and, of course, Wes Ruff, Hall of Famer. Wes Ruff.
Okay, Wes is gonna push back and tell you I was honored by the Hall of Fame. I was not inducted into the Hall of Fame.
There's a difference.
He's gonna, it's like, but a great honor for him and way overdue in my opinion, knowing what Wes has done in the local sports scene forever, as well as especially with the game of golf for so long. But that kind of reminds me that the semantics and the language, Spence, is a little bit like when you and I play golf. I know that you taught me a great phrase to use, along with my buddy Chris Lino, who told me this a couple years ago. Said when he's walking to the cart off the green, and he said there's a difference when the guy tells you, "I got a 5," or he says to you, "I'll take a 5." And I know that's in the same vein, Spence. I know you walk off a lot of greens and just yell over, "I'll take a 4. I'll take a 4."
I feel like I keep my score with integrity, but at times I'll take a generous drop or maybe give myself a putt. But
that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, it was great to see Wes.
Jack Nicklaus was one of the obviously probably the greatest golfer ever, and I've heard him say time and time again over the years in interviews when people ask him for advice or about the game of golf. He says, people forget that first and foremost, it's supposed to be a fun game that you go out and you enjoy it with friends and family or new friends or whoever, and you have fun with it. And people who get all wrapped up in what their score is or what the technicalities are when they're playing a fun round, on a Saturday morning are losing sight of what it's supposed to be all about,
Yeah.
And it's one of the great people to be reminded of that lesson about, right? We had a great time on Friday.
We did.
Fun to hang out with you guys.
For sure.
Thank you.
No, thank you for the invite. Last thing on this, and then we'll move on. Was one thing really changed my approach to the game, where one of the really good players I play with, and he said, if you want to improve, you go to the range. If you want to improve, you go hit balls. If you want to improve, you take a lesson. If you want to improve, you grab somebody that can help you understand your swing. We're out here to have a good time. We're not out like during the round, because you can drive yourself crazy with every single minute adjustment you feel like you have to make while you're playing. But then you lose sight of the fact that we're outside for 4 hours in the sunshine having a good time.
Spence, you know me and you know my game, and it's really in the gutter most of the time.
No, that's not true.
But when I'm
standing on the ball, okay?
When I'm standing around over the ball, and all of a sudden I have 8 different things I'm thinking about, I already know that I'm defeated. I already know that I'm only going to maybe take care of 2 of those 8 things on this swing.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, you're in trouble when you're trying to outthink yourself.
For sure. All right. Well, let's do the Jazz stuff this segment. Then we'll save the NBA playoff stuff for our second segment. Smitty's live with us for an hour. June 25th is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So weeks away from the NBA draft. I will be anchoring our coverage with you and Gordy. Can't wait for it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a good time. What, as somebody that was in these rooms for basically 4 decades, what's the process like right now? As weeks before the draft, we're here, and so it's kind of go time. What's happening to prepare for this thing?
Yeah. So now, Spence, the NBA personnel the last few weeks, they've gotten through the NBA pre-draft camp, which is a couple weeks ago in Chicago. Following that, then there were a bunch of what we call agent workouts. Most of them centered in 2 areas in Chicago while they're at the pre-draft camp. Right after that, some agents would organize some individual workouts for their players, their draft-eligible players. And then almost all of that group get on separate flights and fly to the L.A. area. And then they spend last week about a 4 or 5 day period prior to the Memorial Day weekend going to agent workouts in Thousand Oaks, in Santa Monica, in Huntington Beach, in various places north of L.A., and they're all in different gyms, and they're coordinating with each other about who's going to have a workout at 10 in the morning, and with their 5 guys, and all the people from the teams want to be there, and so they don't want to miss the workout for a guy who's working out in another gym. And so the agent says, well, we'll do ours at 1 o'clock. So all you guys at the 10 o'clock workout in Santa Monica can then jump in your car and get on the 405 and drive up to Thousand Oaks and get to the gym in time for the 1 o'clock workout there. And then some of you got to come back to UCLA at 4 o'clock for the workout that one agency is going to have with their 3 guys. And I mean, it's really a jumble, and sometimes you have to divide your forces because you have a lot of guys from your organization that are there watching the workouts, maybe conducting some interviews at hotels, sometimes right there at the gym, on the side of the gym while guys are walking out of the gym. It really becomes a hodgepodge sometimes, depending on who's available and who you want to talk to and who you want to reach out to. And then you're also working with the agents at that time about guys they represent who you may have an interest in bringing to your market for a more full-scale workout with your coaches in tow, running the workouts and being able to do interviews and do player profiles and those kinds of things. And so they've got all that stuff, all that so-called travel stuff is in the bank. So now they're starting to invite players to their home market. So the Jazz are working on scheduling guys to come in for workouts. They're working with other teams, so they're calling their counterparts in Denver and Phoenix and Sacramento and Golden State. Hey, are you bringing in the kid from Rutgers on Thursday? Can you send them here on Friday so we can get a look at them and that kind of thing? So you're coordinating with the teams as well as coordinating with the agents. So there's a lot of moving parts for a lot of years. Our point man on that was Walt Perrin, who was our vice president player personnel for a long time. And Walt was always going crazy this time of year, mixing and matching and moving all the chess pieces around. And it never works out the way you want it to because a guy always drops out or a guy missed a flight or a guy twisted his ankle yesterday in Denver, so now he can't work out for you today. And so you got all those moving parts going on. And then add on top of that, you've now got also a contingency that's going to go over to Treviso, Italy in the next week to watch European guys do the same thing that was done in Chicago here at the NBA pre-draft camp. So the European pre-draft camp will be held in Treviso, which is just outside of Venice, Italy. And a lot of guys trying to draw the long straw so they can get a trip over Italy for a week to watch some of the Italian players and get some good food, in the early June before they're really cranking out the draft, which, as you mentioned, is the last week of June.
So when it comes to individual workouts, the way teams handle these workouts, and, it was always one of my favorite things to sit back and watch. I can remember before Jeff Van Gundy was the head coach of the Knicks and was Pat Riley's assistant, he was the he was the honorary chest passer for these young kids. They'd come in, and I can remember, I think it was 92 when the Knicks had a late first-round pick. They used it on Hubert Davis, but they worked out Doug Christie and Robert Horry together. And I was courtside watching the whole thing. I just thought it was the coolest thing, watching these things kind of transpire. What are you looking for? If you put yourself in the seat of the Utah Jazz, first of all, as a team with a top 5 pick, you have doors opened all over the place. Agents want to talk to you. Players want to work out for you because you have a top 5 pick. So I would imagine that opens up avenues and doors that the Jazz wouldn't have if they were only at 21, right? So you have a top 5 pick. People will answer your phone call. They want to talk to you. What are you trying to accomplish throughout the process of these individual workouts and player interviews? What are you trying to find out?
Yeah, most of it, Spence, it really has to do with getting to know the individual player and also doing any follow-up in terms of physical testing him, making sure he doesn't have a bad knee, or you heard that he played during the season with a sore back. You want to check on those things with your medical staff while they're in town here. They all go through medical testing in Chicago, so every team gets the exact same reports out of the Chicago pre-draft camp for all 30 guys. They put it in a big binder. You would have a meeting with all of your decision makers, with all your people within your organization, usually about a week before the draft, and you sit down for a whole evening with your doctors, and you go through every player, page by page. You start with the A's, and you go all the way through the Z's, and you go through, how is this guy in Chicago? Yeah, he's okay. He's a green, he's an orange, he's a red flag, depending on how his physical came out. But when he comes in your market, if there was something, there was a question, then you have a chance to follow up on that kind of thing. The workout itself is probably the last thing on the priority scale of things that you do, because you've been watching him play all year. You watched him in Chicago with the other guys. The workout you may have, there are specific rules to the workout in your market. So, for example, you cannot work out more than 6 guys at one time. So the perfect workout is when you have 6 guys who are all playing similar positions and all who are projected to be in a similar space of the draft, because now you can kind of look at apples to apples and see how they play against each other. But you're always couched that with a degree of ambiguity, because you're not sure, if what you see good, bad in the middle in a workout is really who the guy is. And those are the things that really temper your what you come away with on those. We've had we had Carlos Boozer, who was obviously had a terrific career and had great years for the Jazz. Came in for his first workout with us and was not very good at all.
He was second rounder, yeah.
But we get him in the interview and we say, hey, Carlos, how'd you feel out there in the court? It looked like you were a little sluggish. You didn't work, didn't quite what we were expecting, and he said, well, yeah, I know. I apologize. Probably because I don't have a lot of energy today. And we said, is there a reason for that? And, or something we should know. And he goes, well, I don't know. I haven't eaten in 24 hours. And we said, whoa.
Before an NBA workout.
You haven't eaten in 24 hours? What do you mean? He goes, well, I got up yesterday morning in Durham and I had to get the flight and I don't have a credit card, so I don't have any money. And when we traveled with Duke on the road for our games, we were supplied food by the team, but we were always told that we couldn't order any room service because they weren't allowed to pay for that. Mm-hmm. And so I got here in the hotel and I didn't have a credit card. I don't have any money, so I haven't eaten. We go, what are you talking about? And so we actually had him come back for another workout like 2 weeks later, and Kevin O'Connor told him, look, Carlos, you're going to Golden State tomorrow for another workout. You make sure you eat properly, you do all this. And look, if you ever have a problem, here's my credit card number. You just keep it in your wallet and charge it to me. He goes, don't be doing that. Mm-hmm. You're playing with your career. And Carlos was just being honest, with the process. And I don't have any money, so I'm not, that's just a situation.
Sure,
yeah. And then you flip the other end, and you have guys like Donovan Mitchell, who had a nice a couple of years at Louisville, nothing spectacular, nothing on the All-American level, anything like that. And he came in and does a workout for us, and we're going, oh, okay, all right, hold on. Was this like just happened to be his day, or is that something we didn't see at Louisville for whatever the reason, or are what we're seeing, is that really, to be believed? Or so you're measuring all those things, and it's always all over the scale. Rudy came in, and Rudy did his workout 3 days before the draft, and Rudy had been sick in the Chicago pre-draft camp. So he did not perform very well. So a lot of teams, were skeptical about who he was because he was coming from France and he played on a lower division team there. And maybe he's just 7'1", and, he just happens to be tall, but isn't that good or whatever it is. And he came in and for us anyway, really showed that he could move and could run and move his hips. And we thought there was something there. And but even then he still slid to 27 in the draft, and so these things go all over the scale. You have to have one of the things you really need in your room as a team is to have some guys who have been through that process, many times and understand what it is and don't get caught up in the things that don't look really look bad, or the things that look really good and don't get swayed either way. But you have, some kind of experience doing that kind of thing. Obviously, the Jazz do with Danny Ainge and guys like Bart Taylor, who have been through that for 10, 15 years now, and have a good handle on those kind of things. So that's the stuff you're looking for when you get them in, for an on-site workout and trying to figure out, mostly who is this guy, and is he someone that we want to seriously consider adding to our group.
Let me follow up about the Donovan workout, because it's one of these chapters in Jazz history, in Jazz lore, that has a lot of tales surrounding it, right? And I can remember I was with the team's radio station at the time, and you started hearing things after the workout where the reports were Dennis Lindsay, who was running the team at the time, basically told everybody, you do not whisper a word about what we just saw. And if you do, you will lose your job. I don't know if it was that dramatic. But then it's interesting because Summer League this year will be up at the Huntsman Center as they're renovating Delta Center. And the last time Summer League was at the Delta Center is when Donovan went head-to-head against Jason Tatum and gave it to him. And that's when everybody's like, wait a second. Because Tatum, I mean, I'm not taking a victory lap. I thought Tatum was the best player in that draft. All due respect to Markelle Fultz, who went number 1 and couldn't stay healthy and had some weird stuff happen. Unfortunately, that's part of the NBA journey sometimes. And when I watched Donovan, I remember he slapped the floor and he picked Tatum's pocket, went down and dunked it with force and started doing things that I didn't know he could do. What was it about that workout that motivated Dennis to be so adamant, like, we just found something special here that maybe we didn't know that we were going to find?
Yeah. First of all, I would respond just to the notion that Dennis may have said something, nobody speak about this, or I don't. If that ever happened, I wasn't in the room during that time, because look, we were picking 24 that year in the draft, and during the workout, film study, internal discussion, conversations with other guys we knew around the league who you might have seen him more and knew a little bit more about him, and as we did all of our background work and all that kind of stuff, he became a player we were interested in, but we also felt like, enough other teams are going to see what we see, and he's not going to get to us. But, okay, we like him to some extent. Okay, we put him up on the wall and our board and whatever, and then Dennis was able to do his magic on draft night, and be able to move up to 13, and because everything all of our research showed that he probably wasn't going to get past 15, 16, 17, something like that. So, sometimes those things happen and they fall in your lap. Now, were we the only team that like Donovan Mitchell? Were we the only ones who saw what he might be able? No, that narrative is just not true. A lot of teams liked him. A lot of teams had some concerns about why he didn't play that way when he was at Louisville. You can look at a lot of different things, whatever. And some of it really, Spence, just goes to the fact that he has what I determine now, looking back on it, he just has more of an NBA type game in him than you're allowed to show in college, and we see guys who can do that from time to time. As far as the process itself, we're always looking for different guys who can try and add to your group. It's everything you have up on the board, everything that you're looking at, everything is monitored, is recorded in terms of what teams you've talked to. If you're trying to move, I know the Jazz are picking 5 and 21 at the moment. Those are the picks they have. We always would be careful about saying, the picks we have at the moment are these, because you never know if you're going to move up, you're going to move back, or you're going to move out of the draft, depending on all kinds of things that can be going on. Of course, this year for the Jazz, they're in a situation where everything, in my opinion, is in play. There is nothing that's not, either discussable or something where you say, yeah, that we're just not going to do that kind of a thing, because they don't have a team that's in a position, to act like that. So they'll have everything open. Everything's, I would think, is in play as far as moving and trading and trying to compile picks and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to be the interesting part for this next month is all the stuff that might be going on leading up to draft day.
All right, before we catch a break, let's move over to this draft and give me your thoughts on this. So, when you look at who the Jazz have on their roster, and in a way, this always concerned me with Donovan and Mike as a starting backcourt, even though they're both awesome, and obviously they've both gone on to play well elsewhere. We'll use Oklahoma City as an example because they're just kind of the shining star as of now. Lou Dort, 6'5", 220. Alex Caruso, 6'5", 195. I feel like he's bigger than that. Shea, 6'7". Even a guy like Cason Wallace, who's 6'3", 6'4", plays a lot bigger than that. Jalen is 6'9". So Kendrick Williams is 6'7". So on the perimeter, Oklahoma City has tremendous size and length, And, you saw last night, they just put Anthony Edwards in jail. He had nowhere to go. And when you look at the Jazz roster right now, Clarkson, I don't know if he's part of the future plans, but he's 6'3". They list Isaiah at 6'3". I don't know that he's 6'3". Keontae's 6'3", 6'4". Colin Sexton, 6'3". Like, the majority of their guards aren't necessarily big and long like the wings for Minnesota outside of Mike and the wings for Oklahoma City. And I feel like, it's easy to say, well, Danny likes length because he drafted Tatum and Brown. Everybody likes length, and that's what you need. So when you look at some of the prospects available where the Jazz could be drafting, and we don't know what's going to happen. Ace Bailey is 6'7", 6'8". VJ Edgecombe's 6'5". The Fears kid is small. Trey Johnson, 6'4", 6'5". There are some big wings available with some length and some size. Dylan's not going to get to them. Dylan would be great. Dylan's 6'5", but he's probably going to be off the board at 2. I think they need more length and athleticism on the perimeter. I feel like Lowry and Walker are the only 2 players where I'd feel confident, like, okay, we've got those 2. And then everybody else has tremendous question marks, in my opinion. I know you said everything's on the table, but at 5, what should Jazz fans hope as far as best case that the Jazz could walk away with?
Well, I would think that a number of the guys that are going to be there, I think if they ended up picking 5, there may be a couple of surprises that happen at 3 and 4. I think 1 and 2 are probably locked in, whether it's those 2 teams, Dallas and San Antonio, take the Flag kid and the Harper kid, or if they for some reason make a trade of some sort, and a lot of the scuttlebutt, as you get closer to the draft is going to start getting some steam behind what Giannis's situation is in Milwaukee and what's going to happen with that, because those would be very interesting discussions if you're in Dallas or San Antonio and somebody from Milwaukee calls you and says, hey, you got a minute, because
I got a minute for you.
Yeah,
if we're talking about Giannis.
Exactly. And so anything could happen in that regard, in those slots. But then, when you get to 3, 4, 5, there's some discussion about who these guys could be and what teams are going to need. And look, a team like the Jazz, if they don't do anything else and if they just stay at 5 and they end up picking a guy at 5, their responsibility, in my opinion, is to pick the guy, whoever they think is the best talent and has the best chance of succeeding,
regardless of position,
and doing well. Yeah,
okay.
because they need players.
Yes, they do.
They're
badly.
They're at the bottom looking up, and so you can't be going for, well, we need a point guard, so we'll just take whoever the point guard. If you determine that some other guy at another position is going to be a better player. Now, that's always an assessment you make. That's always an evaluation of guys in your room. That's always ends up being when all the dust settles, the guy who's your decision maker. In this case, for the Jazz, I believe it's Danny Ainge has the final word. He'll make an assessment based on everybody's input and how everybody has seen these guys, and determine what would be make the most sense for the Jazz in terms of adding skill and talent to their base. What position is that? Who knows? Is it the Fears kid who may have a good career as a point guard? Is it the Johnson kid from Texas who's a flat out scorer and has good size? Has a pro game and a pro body to go with it at that point? Is it somebody like the kid from Duke, Knipple, who measured shorter than everybody thought he was in Chicago, but is a true playmaker out on the floor with the ball, is really a smart guy? So do you want a guy like that to add to your mix? Because as we're seeing with these teams that are still alive in the playoffs, they all have guys that fit in round pegs into round holes, meaning they put a team together, right? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an MVP, okay? The Holmgren kid is not far behind in terms of just how he affects the game, what he brings on the floor. But now you're talking about 2 key contributors to their team were guys who were not even drafted in Lou Dort and Caruso. And so you have to figure out as an organization who the big guys are, who those guys are going to be, going forward. But then you also have to plug in those holes somewhere along the line with guys that you determine can add to your group and fit in and be part of that puzzle you're trying to put together. That's what makes doing this such a difficult task for teams. And that's why, Spence, you see some organizations that just always spinning their wheels and can never get any traction because they don't have the patience to be able to put a few pieces together and then wait till the next cycle and put another piece together and then wait for the next cycle and try and see what they're doing long-term and big picture. And that's the situation the Jazz are in right now.
About 2 hours away from tip-off in Indiana where the Knicks and the Pacers are going to do battle, we have some breaking news. Aaron Nesmith is available to play after spraining his ankle in Game 3. We'll catch a quick break. We'll talk about that game tonight, and we'll talk OKC, Minnesota, maybe do a little more Jazz if time allows. Richard Smith live in studio for one more segment coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. About 1 hour and 50 minutes away, tip-off tonight, massive game in Indiana. Knicks are going to try to lock it up at 2 games apiece. The Pacers will try to take a 3-1 lead over the Knicks tonight. Aaron Nesmith available to play after spraining his ankle in Game 3. He left for the locker room, did come back and finish off the game. Richard Smith is live in studio. Smitty, I wanted to get one more quick Jazz thing in because I haven't asked you this. Walker Kessler is extension eligible. So the date is coming up as far as, the decision to extend Walker Kessler. $14.6 million free agent hold. I got Bobby Marks' notes in front of me because Bobby's the man.
Yep.
It feels like a no-brainer, right? I mean, Walker, I feel like after a great rookie year, had a dip year 2, but really played well year 3. I would imagine this is a formality that they do lock up Walker Kessler.
Well, Spence, I would agree with you in terms of I think he's a guy who you can actually have as one of your pieces of trying to build something going forward. So that makes sense to me on the surface. But you have to look behind the scenes, and you have to look at your whole organization and the whole team, and as you're trying to build it out. And they don't have to extend Walker Kessler this year. They can.
Yeah, it's true.
They can go another year on the last year, what would be next year, his 4th year, the last year of his rookie contract, and then he would become a restricted free agent. They can give him a qualifying offer, and then they can wait and see. Because Spence, if you're not holding on to a guy who's helping you to get to a mountaintop that you're right near, okay? If you're just still trying to build your foundation, there are a lot of moving parts and pieces that could change between now and next summer. He could have a bad 4th year. He could, heaven forbid, blow a knee out and have something happen. So there's not an urgency on the Jazz's part to extend him. Sometimes you want to do those things as a good faith measure and to show the player, hey, we want you, and here we go. And so those are the decisions that you have to make, and those are the business decisions that you talk over with your group and your owner, and then you're talking with his agent and trying to understand what all the ramifications are around extending him right away or waiting on it, or explaining, hey, we want to wait because next year we might have more money. He might play himself into a better deal. There's a lot of that jockeying around and negotiating behind the scenes. So there's a lot of ways that the Jazz could play it. But just for our listeners, for them to understand it in general business and team building terms, the Jazz do not have to do anything this summer. If they choose not to, they can ride it out for another year, where then next summer they would still have the final say with Kessler being a restricted free agent in terms of whether they want to bring him back. Now, that's what happened going back to the Gordon Hayward scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and the Jazz, were playing it out, and then they offered him a deal that he wanted to go get another offer, which he did, and he won that one and whatever and all that kind of stuff. But, so in the NBA, as long as you like a guy and as long as he's your guy going forward and you think he's a good part of your future, the team, no matter what it does, always has the control for a minimum of the first 7 years of the player's career, because you have that restricted free agency tag on them where you can always match an offer that someone else would give him. So you're also playing that game, because you say, well, if we wait and next year he could earn some more money, but maybe next year we get him cheaper, or maybe next year, some team that has a whole bunch of money really loves him and they just throw a big, whopping Lowry Markkanen type deal at him, and you go, whoa, we can't do that, whatever. So there's a lot of dancing around behind closed doors that the team has to figure out. Is he going to be one of their guys that they want to make that kind of financial commitment too.
Let me ask you this, since you brought up the Hayward stuff. There is a narrative that's been out there for a while, and I don't know that I ever fully bought into it, but I don't know. I have no idea. My whole assertion is the way Gordon handled the exit and the Players Tribune article. I feel like he wanted to sit at the cool kids' lunch table in a bigger market, and I feel like he wanted to go play for his college coach. But some people believe, as a result of the decision not to simply max him as soon as he was up for it and give him what he wanted after the rookie deal was able to be extended and tell him to go bet on himself, was one of the reasons he left. Do you put any stock into that?
No, I don't know. I understand what that narrative was. I think it was more really knowing Gordon the way that I know him. It's just my own personal opinion. I think when he had the opportunity to go play for his college coach and had the opportunity to go play for a storied franchise like the Celtics and was going into a good situation where they had a chance to win and all that, that I think that was too much of a pull for him.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I do also think that, again, my own opinion, my own gut tells me that he was more comfortable playing here in this market because he's more of a Salt Lake City type guy off the floor than he is a Boston type guy off the floor there. I mean, his personality, he's a quiet guy, he's a family guy. Salt Lake City really fit him to a T in terms of what he wants to be just in his life in general. And so I was a little bit surprised when he went to Boston, only because I coming from that region, growing up there in that region of the country, I knew that it wasn't something that would really fit his personality outside of the basketball stuff. And so the real life stuff, as we call it. So I knew that would be a major adjustment for he and his young family. But but I think the pull, again, just my opinion, the pull to play for Brad Stevens and go to Boston and do that was too much of a storybook thing for him. And look, he ended up leaving at that time. The Jazz had the financial ability to pay more money. He left in the neighborhood of $40 million on the table to go to Boston. That the Jazz would have guaranteed him more because they could give him that fifth year that other teams couldn't. That's
right.
how the rules work.
Right.
And he chose to leave that on the table and go and But again, I think it was more of an emotional thing for him and on a personal side than it was a business thing.
All right, couple minutes left here, so let's get to the playoffs that are going on right now. Before we get to tonight, let's talk OKC, Minnesota. OKC up 3-1. And last night, Smitty, first of all, awesome game. Really fun to watch. Yep. High-level shot making. My assertion is Minnesota beats maybe every team in the league last night, besides the one they played.
Yeah.
And, Ant's taking a lot of heat today. Julius Randle, for the second straight game, just disappeared, watched the game in the fourth quarter from the bench after Chris Finch decided to go in a different direction. All that's fine and good, and we can talk Minnesota this, Minnesota that. They hung 41 points in the fourth quarter on one of the best defenses in pro basketball. To me, last night was who OKC is. Mark Dagnall was asked after the game, what'd you learn about your team tonight? And he said nothing. That's who we are. I felt last night was more about OKC than Minnesota. What's your take?
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right. I think it was a great horse race, and it came down to the wire, and one team, beat the other team out by a nose, to use that analogy. And Minnesota, they have a ball bounce their way, or they have a shot fall in for them, or they have a foul call that should have been made that wasn't made, whatever. All those things that can happen in a tight game with under 2 minutes to go. A couple things go their way, and it's 2-2. And Randall has a bad game, and Ant has just a pedestrian game. And everybody goes, look, you see, these guys are for real because, look, their two main guys were just so-so, and they still won the game against the team that had the best record. I mean, that would be the narrative,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
So it was a close game. It was a fun game to watch. I do think it's going to be hard for Minnesota to ratchet it up now, because now they're going to, in order to get out of the series and move on to the finals, Minnesota's going to have to beat OKC 3 times in a row.
And twice in their building.
Their building.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a tough order. But as we've seen early in the playoffs, that's why you play them, because maybe somebody gets in early foul trouble. Maybe somebody has an injury. Something happens to affect the sway of what the momentum and what's going on. You never know. Somebody comes out of the woodwork. Like if Minnesota pulled that game out, Spence, you'd be talking about how good they can play against OKC, how well-rounded they are, and that you had a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, have a game.
Game of his life.
NBA game, have a Trey Mann game.
Right.
Yeah. And so you'd be talking about that kind of thing. And so the narrative always changes depending on when you get close games, just what happened and a bounce of a ball here and there or whatever, and the whole tone and what everybody's talking about changes from one thing to the next. And when you lose and it's a tough game, then you're looking at your main guys and trying to point the fingers at them, which is always the lazy way out, in my opinion.
So in about an hour and a half and change, we have tip-off of the Pacers-Knicks game. It is 2-1 Indiana. And since you and I last spoke, the Knicks pulled a miraculous comeback off, as they've done this year in the postseason a few different times. And when they went down 20 in the second quarter, I almost went and hit golf balls. I'm like, I'm not watching this. I don't think enough was talked about as far as the way they closed the second quarter to get it within 13. That doesn't sound awesome, but when you're down 20 and all the momentum's going the other way, and you're able to get a couple of threes here, there, a couple stops here, there, and just end the half with a little bit of confidence so you're not dead. I felt like that wasn't nothing. The Nesmith injury changed the game. He's available to play tonight. We'll see if he can go. He did come back in and close the game. But when Nesmith went down, it kind of changed the way that, they were guarding Jalen. Jalen gets in foul trouble. When you were in studio last week and when we were on the golf course on Friday, I said to you, can Tom find 10 minutes for Landry Shamet? Can he find 10, 15 minutes for Precious Achiuwa, who did not get off the bench? Former Ute DeLon Wright got some run, played really good defense. It's weird to see DeLon play with so little confidence offensively. Like, he wasn't looking to attack at all on offense, but did guard well, and Shamet gave him some good run as well. Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup. Josh Hart to the bench. I give Josh a lot of credit for the way he played coming in off the bench with 10 big rebounds. He's as good of a rebounding wing, I think, as there is in the league. No part of me believes New York is going to win this series. That's just where I'm at. We'll see what happens tonight. Pacers are a 2.5-point favorite. So before we end our hit this week, your thoughts on the Knicks comeback and what do you think happens tonight?
Yeah, well, I think the first of all, for all of the talk all season long, everybody has, the teams themselves, the media, everybody, you're talking in December, January, February about who is in the position to have home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. And everybody's always, that's always the talking point. The Knicks, so far, are 3-5 at home at Madison Square Garden in the playoffs, and they're 6-1 on the road. So what does that mean? Who knows what it means? Other teams get up to play at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks don't play as fluidly maybe or as easy because they got all the expectations and everything on them that they're supposed to win when they're at the Garden, and the New York fans are going to get them across the finish line or whatever the mantra is. And then they go on the road and they play, whatever they do. Now, they've had several games that they've won in the 6-1 road playoff run of theirs where it's been a 1-minute game. And it's been whoever makes this shot or whoever gets this stop or whoever makes a defensive play or whatever it's going to be. And the Knicks have been able to do it several times in these playoffs to their credit. And then the other night, Towns just went on a heater, and he had one of those 3-point shots. I thought he was just throwing up to hopefully get a foul. They didn't call the foul, but but he banked it in.
He got fouled, by the way.
Yeah,
that was a foul.
Yeah. But okay, so called, banks it in. Okay, that's what's going on at this moment. Okay, and he felt it, and I think Indiana felt it a little bit. But again, the same thing. A ball bounces one way, the ball bounces the other way. A shot goes in, one of his shots doesn't fall, or rims out, whatever. And Indiana comes out, and all of a sudden they're up 3-0, right? And everybody's talking about burying the Knicks and everything. And now the talk is, hey, can the Knicks do it again and even this series and get back to New York? I say, I'm looking at the playoffs so far, and I'm looking at their record on the road and home. I don't know if the Knicks want to go back home. Maybe they just want to keep staying on the road. I mean, the way they're playing. Yeah. But it's a fun, entertaining series. They both are, and I'm expecting nothing less than that tonight. I think it's fun to watch. I think both teams really get after it, and both teams, Spence, to your earlier point, have done things with their roster where it's not just top draft picks that are pulling the wagon. It's other guys that they've brought in and pieced together to have a full team effect that can help you to win.
Should be fun. Smitty, great to see you. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
The great Richard Smith. All right, coming up, join me for the Kyle Van Noy golf tournament. So join me on Monday, June the 23rd for the 2025 Van Noy Charity Golf Challenge at the Black Desert Resort in scenic St. George. All the proceedings from this tournament go to benefit the Van Noy Valor Foundation that helps foster kids and the adoption foundations. Kyle was adopted as an infant, so this cause is very meaningful to him and his family. It starts on Sunday, June the 22nd with a welcome cocktail party at 7 o'clock and a Q&A. On Monday, we get going at 8 a.m. with a check-in and a breakfast at Club 73. Welcomes at 8:45. Shotguns start at 9. Awards are at 2:30. Lunch will be served on the course. Go to vannoygolf2025.givesmart.com. All right, before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH. Save a bunch of money on a bunch of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
Great opportunity right now. Dish has just enhanced that promotion with the 2 years of credits, price guarantee, movie channels. How about 3 months free? Guys, if you take advantage of this, if you are a cable or DirecTV customer especially, this is a huge, huge savings for you. You're going to put about $1,000 in your pocket just by making a simple phone call. Get a bigger DVR, auto hops commercials, auto records your locals or your favorite teams' football games or any game. Call us up and take advantage of deals and get installed for free. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's, get you the best price guaranteed. Call today, save money. Also, remember, we've got great internet options. I got a half a dozen different internet providers now, $35 to $50, $55 a month. If you're spending $80, $90, $100 plus for internet, call us up, lower the bill, get you good internet for much cheaper. You got to call 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. Our guy JP stops by coming up next, and we'll get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program, and we'll say goodnight at 6 on a Tuesday afternoon right here on ESPN 700. to do?
Montreal in the summertime.
Oh, man. One would be so lucky.
I don't think I have.
Okay.
I've never even been to Montreal.
Well, you should know that it's on my bucket list. And, if I have any friends that ever plan a trip to Montreal in the summer, I just would like to be included.
I'll go with you.
Thank you. Let's get to our next guest, live in studio. Voice of the Stars, voice of the Royals, host of the Roundball Roundup podcast, and former producer and founder of The Drive, this program. JP, John Paul Chunga, how are you, pal?
I'm honored to do this in person because that would have been hitting me in a different way over the phone.
Indeed. It's great to see you. I don't know. Have you been to the fine city of Montreal before?
No, but I have my passport, so I would love to go at some point. It'd be really fun.
Do you have any plans to go at any time?
I do have plans.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over July, I'm going to be going to Montreal.
Oh, man. Yeah. I got a lot of stuff going on in July.
I know Big 12 Media Days
is during
July. Summer League's during July.
Indeed.
You have a packed social schedule on top of everything that you do.
Yeah.
So I know that it's going to be very difficult to get you away for a trip if it were to be in Montreal in July on the 25th.
Yeah, hypothetically speaking, only hypothetically speaking, let's be clear, I probably could not make it happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know that.
Which you already knew. Let's see. Where should we start today, John Paul? A lot going on in the land of the Utah Jazz. A lot going on with the Royals and the Stars. What's keeping you busiest right now?
Right now it's the Royals and what they're doing. Had a game over the weekend, and I don't know if you watched the broadcast. It was just your boy on it.
Solo style.
Wow.
Cutting budget more, huh?
2 hours and 30 minutes entertaining people who are watching television.
I'm very impressed.
Actively watching television. This is this, and I give you great credit going live 2 to 6
every
Monday
day,
through Friday.
No exceptions.
Except yesterday.
Well, 4 hours. I mean, Memorial Day, we take it off for the troops. I mean, you can knock on us for that if you'd like.
I agree. You should have taken yesterday off, and you did.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was such a difficult thing for you to do.
I didn't want to. I asked to do the show. The key card did not work.
You were like Colin Cowherd.
Yes.
You do not take breaks.
Every day.
No vacations every day.
Nope.
But I did the broadcast solo, 2 hours, 30 minutes on KMYU, the home of the Utah Royals. You can watch those games. Next one up against Racing Louisville. But following this team ahead of an international break where Ali Sentnor, the sensation, is going to be playing for the U.S. women's national team this Saturday against a top 20 team in China.
I knew it was China. Give me a little credit. I knew it was China.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
And I bet you also knew about Mandy McGlynn, who's also on the Utah Royals roster, had 6 saves, had 9 the week before, including the save of the week on BYU's own Ashley Hatch. People know her from her starring for the team down south. I know you're not allowed to say that name.
Thank you. You remember.
She made a save, 11 converted penalties up until she met Mandy McGlynn. She's in soaring form. Allie's in soaring form, and they're getting ready for this international break where the U.S. takes on China. That consumes me right now. And as they look to turn the corner on this second year of existence as the Utah Royals.
So 2.5 hours TV solo indicates the budget has been cut. Who's to blame for that?
David James.
DJ.
No, DJ wasn't available. His son was graduating, which I absolutely understand, empathize with, that he had to go and attend to family matters. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it solo. I'll talk to myself for 2.5 hours, and I did, and I thought it went pretty well.
Did you enjoy it? Because some people don't. Some people find that a heavy, heavy burden to bear.
So it wasn't the first time that I've had to do it solo. They had me do a couple of games last year solo, but it was only radio. But for TV, you just pare it back a little bit. Less words. So it was fine. I really enjoyed it, and it was an awesome performance by one of the best players in all of NWSL, Barbara Banda with Orlando, and they have the legend Marta, who's only
Marta's still playing.
The GOAT of women's soccer.
How old is she?
39 years old.
She's still playing at 39.
She signed a 2-year extension to start this year. So she's playing next year.
That's
as
impressive.
Well.
She's going to play at the age of 40.
She got the NWSL championship last year, the only thing that she doesn't have, and then now just trying to add to the legacy at 39. She's going to go Tom Brady on us.
So we got 1, 2, and 7, minus 11 goal differential, 8 goals scored, 19 goals allowed. What gives? Why the lack of results? Allie's obviously awesome.
Injuries is 100% the reason for that. They've lost their captain, who's supposed to be coming back after the break against Louisville, Paige Monahan. She hasn't been with the team since the very first game. And then their center back, Kaylee Reel, also has been injured as well. The top earner on the team, Chloe Lacasse, their goal scorer, was out with an ACL at the end of last year. So they're expecting her later on in this summer, but without the goal scorer, without the captain, without your major center back, you've just had to dig deep into a lot of this lineup and the depth of the squad. But ultimately, there's still a lot of time. There's a second half of the season to go in NWSL, and if anything shows from the chaos of the league, you get a couple of good results together, you can actually string things to where you're in playoff contention, just like how they were last year, where they didn't have this many points at this same point of the season.
That's right. They did go on a crazy run to end the year. While we're in the space, I know that this year has been challenging. I know that it has been trying. I would imagine it has tugged at your heartstrings a little bit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, last year we have a 15-game unbeaten streak. We have records for goals scored, records for points. It is a season that brought a lot of people a lot of hope about not just the current situation with RSL, but what the future could look like. Gomez no longer here. I believe, is it France? They sold him to a team in France. Chicho scoring goals in San Jose. You know what? I'm not even going to bring up Moose. I'm going to leave Moose aside because I know what that does to you. But, a lot of offensive firepower gone.
Anderson Julio?
Ando? I mean, I call him Ando, but you call him whatever you want.
I call him Andy B.
Okay, there we go. Several pieces moved on. Very few pieces brought in. Our guy, Big Willie Goals, has not looked the part just yet. On a serious note, this feels like a lost season for RSL. I don't see an avenue back.
Already lost season?
Yes, I'm ready to say lost season.
I mean, they lost me at the beginning, so
I know that.
How's it even more of a lost season when you've already lost somebody who was with you since day one?
Lifelong RSL fan.
Lifelong, was there at Rice Eccles Stadium.
Yep.
Is there at Meet the Team Day, meeting Jason Christ, meeting Leslie Tiger Fitzpatrick.
Good pull.
DJ Countess.
Shout out.
Jay Nolly. All the people, for them to see this regression in results, regression in goal production, and the only promise that you get is that this Harriman Messi, Xavier Gozos coming on this team.
Harriman Messi. That
you can really build behind. Yeah. I need goals. I need attractive soccer. I need an idea.
Something.
As our friend Chris Kimrani would say.
Yes.
He said, is there an idea on the field? And sometimes you just don't see any ideas. So that's why I'm out.
All they do is Diego Luna well. And as Ali is headed to the national team, Diego is going to represent the national team in the Gold Cup. So they're going to lose him for 6-7 weeks. I just don't see it, man. Like, I try to be optimistic, and I want that team to do well. But they are so uninspiring, and they're so boring. And I like the Gozo kid, but he just graduated high school. Sign a grown-up. Sign an adult. Do something. But now we have to wait till the primary transfer window.
When the marquee signing is the goalkeeper.
Secondary transfer window, excuse me.
But,
summer.
Yeah, I know people would be correcting you.
I don't want text. I don't want,
they're still going to text.
Tam and such.
They're still going to text, so it's okay. But when Rafa Cabral is your big move, and I'm supposed to get psyched about how many saves that he's making, I don't know if that moves the needle here, knowing that people like our great friend Nate Bench would show up and cheer attacking soccer. Pablo would have this team playing effervescent. They would be electric on the field. And then you see what they have now, not putting the investment. With all the transfers that you have going out, it should be going right back into the team. And knowing that there is so much that you had last year, I just feel a lot. I feel a lot for the fans that are supporting this team because it can get to great heights. You've seen it get to great heights. Just isn't there right now.
Do you have confidence, despite Twitter polls out there who to blame, that the ownership transition will lead to economic investment in additional talent? Because here's the deal, man. As you know, once upon a time, you could build a good team on a budget in this league. that's how we did it in 2009 that allowed that club to lift MLS Cup over Beckham and Donovan and the team of stars against the team is the star, right? We can't do that anymore. Like, I don't know a grip about any of these players that are brought in elsewhere, but you read the releases where they're paying $4 or $5 million for a bit winger, to support the $15 million striker they signed. So with the ownership transition, and my guy Rye, shout out backward hat, guy in their 40s, no big deal. He's got his plate full with hockey and the Jazz, so he steps aside. My guy Blitz maintains a portion of the ownership control, but now it's the Millers' show. Do you think they're going to write checks?
They have to prove it this upcoming transfer window and the successive ones, but looking at the track record with what they've done with the Jazz, you have to think that if they believe that there's a winner there, they will invest in it because that's what they've done in the past. If you give them good reasons to go into luxury tax, I'm sure they would have done it with the Jazz when Dennis asks, hey, can we start making real trades to build around Donovan and Rudy in this next iteration post-Gordon Hayward? Can I get that green light and go for Mike Conley? Can I sign Bojan Bogdanovic? And even before that, could I have signed Nico Mirotic? Could I do that? Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
They gave him the opportunity to do that. So if you really have a detailed plan and are ready to go for it, I have no doubt that the Millers would be able to do that. And you need to give them a little bit of time. They're still in the honeymoon phase.
Stop sending out your polls.
It's okay. It'll be fine. I get it. You're in the front row of the supporters section, wearing a tight jersey. It looks sick, but it'll be okay.
You can choose your size of jerseys. Doesn't have to be that snug. All right.
We're all getting older.
We are indeed. And one more thing here, because you do hear this thing where it's like, well, the Millers didn't go into luxury tax for the Jazz. A luxury tax paying team in the NBA is $185 million. How much money do you have to spend in MLS?
It's not that.
But let's talk about a number for real, because you don't have to spend 185 mil, but you 10, 15, 20, and spend 7 or 8 on one guy. Don't bring in $4 million players. Like Diogo is awful. Lachlan Brook can't get off the bench. Mark Zook has moments, but instead of bringing in 3 or 4 like $800,000 million players, go spend $7, $8, $9 million on one dude. What sort of money are we really looking at? What type of money are we looking at to get this team back to consistent competitive level in Major League Soccer? 15, 20 mil?
Yeah, it's around there, especially to get just a goal scorer.
Yeah.
Because they needed somebody.
Yeah.
You saw Chicho had a big burden, and even he needed Anderson Julio, Andres Gomez. He needed things around him to be successful.
Yeah.
But you have to find someone at the most crazy position in soccer, which is being able to score goals when 11 people are trying to stop you from doing that. And it's why all those guys go for such high capital, because it is a very difficult job. This isn't 2009 where the guy who takes the penalty kick is now a doctor.
Shout out, Robbie.
Shout out Dr. Robbie Russell.
A championship for Salt Lake City.
Yes. Saunders on his line.
Indeed.
And you think about not only Robbie Russell, but UCLA's own Tony Beltran.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the same thing that you can do right now.
Right.
Well, Lionel Messi is attacking you on the other end.
Right.
I don't know how it's going to fare when he's going against UCLA's number 3 in the back. You have to invest in these teams, and they have the youth investment thing really well. You go out to Harriman, as I am, grinding,
often
pounding pavement.
I know that.
Watching Royals practice. You see that the youth setup is good there. They have a great facility. People want to go and play there and train there. But now it needs to match in investment on the first senior team level.
Pablo on the show last week broke a little news, because we're journalists around here, hard hitting at that.
Gumshoes.
That he was told that the Millers are actually no longer, no, it's not no longer, but the Millers are not interested in like selling Diego and developing Gozo and moving on. Like, they want to keep the young players here. I thought that was a piece of good news. Now, if a club in Bundesliga, little inside, La Liga, whatever, call and offer 30 mil for Diego, you probably take the 30 mil for Diego. But until that happens, if you're an RSL fan, that's good news that maybe Diego's here for a few years.
That's the whole thing. If they're willing to invest in the player that everybody's going to watch, and frankly, every other team is looking to defend, and he still produces,
right.
Which is the most amazing part about Diego is that he's a marked man amongst a team that doesn't really have many marked men. That he can do that is unreal. If they're willing to invest in that dude, you have to give this ownership group the benefit of doubt that they'll start to figure and piece things together with what Kurt has going in looking at all these players.
Do you feel like Diego is now Moon Man and no longer Moon Boy?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, good.
He's been Moon Man.
Okay, good.
When Mauricio Pochettino talks about his big manhood, that is proof that he's a man. He's no longer a boy.
No, I'm with you. I mean, we could get into the dark arts and the Dunsethery, but we can leave that aside. Real quick, before we get to the Jazz, I know you know this, 95 days away from Utah football. My question is, when do you start? We start our countdown at 100 days for Utah football. When do you start yours?
When Phil Steele comes out with that book. When it arrives at the door after the pre-order, that's when I start my countdown. Because that's when I know it's real.
Yeah.
And that's when I can start looking at two deeps, fall camp battles, quarterback rooms, tight end rooms, personnel. That's when I start really gearing in.
13 personnel. We're fans of that on the show. All right. A few minutes left. Let's talk a little Jazz here. So we're just a few weeks away from the draft, June 25th. And, I'm watching last night, and, Caruso's 6'5", Dort is 6'5", Shea is 6'7", and obviously Chet's, but they're perimeter players. Cason Wallace 6'4", Jalen 6'6". The Jazz need length on the perimeter, and we'll see what Taylor can do. Like, obviously, he was hurt, and so we don't know anything about him. I still like him. Cody's built, had a rough year one. We'll see what happens year two. For our listeners, JP is a Jazz employee, so I don't want to put you in a bad spot. But as you look at the draft, what do you hope they come away with? Whether they stay at 5, trade up, trade down, what do you hope they come away with this year?
I think for them, it's another big swing, trying to get that guy who can help this team as everybody's young. Because you look at the way OKC built it, a lot of draft picks, a lot of young players, and the CBA is going to crush them eventually, but still, that's the way that they're going about building this team and taking big swings with their draft picks. You look at Danny Ainge's history in drafts, him being able to find players. He's done it before. He knows exactly what gets winning teams together. It's why you don't blanch when he drafts Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in successive drafts. Oh, isn't there a little position crossover? No, he realizes that this is a league about wings, and you need wings as the lifeblood of your team. So for the Jazz, I'm hoping that they find someone who can eventually be an impactful player come the time that they're ready to go out and win and push in the other draft capital, because they can't use every single draft pick.
Sure.
I think of the Nets as a team that, are they going to use 4 first-round draft picks this year?
Yeah.
4 first-round draft picks. It's not the 3 that the Jazz had, and Brooklyn's in a similar situation, but 4 first-round draft picks. How are they going to use that? You're going to see things move with the Jazz as they start to keep getting in that talent acquisition mode and get to the point where they've got guys who will be a part of this.
We keep hearing a lot about the potential of being bold, and San Antonio at 2 is interesting.
Fortune favors the bold.
The team is the star. I mean, we're dropping all of the tidbits you need. San Antonio at 2 is interesting. Philly at 3 is also interesting. Philly's more win now because of Embiid and Paul George. The Paul George stuff, I mean, you hear the stuff about maybe they'll move on from Paul George and trade 3. If the Jazz wanted to do that, it would have to include marketing. If you look at the numbers, there's no other way to make it work. And I don't know that Paul George is something that the Jazz would look at, even if it meant 3, 5 and Lowry for Paul George and 3 and some other pieces. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. But do you believe that there's potential? Like if you do your calculation on Dillon at 2, do you believe it's worth going all in as much as you can to try to move up and grab him? No, Dallas isn't moving 1. Dumont was like, we're keeping Juan Nico. You can't trade it. We're keeping, we're going to draft Cooper Flagg.
Which is sad that an owner has to come out and say,
For
hey,
sure.
we're going to do the thing that we should do.
Yep. Don't get
worry.
any ideas, pal.
Don't worry.
But if 2 and 3 are in play, would you like to see the Jazz get bold and kind of try to do what they can to maybe get a franchise-changing piece?
Of course, because they need a franchise-changing piece. They need somebody that can be it.
Yeah.
The it guy, the cover man, the dude who can get this done, because that guy currently isn't on the roster, and you need them at this top level. I know Indiana's a very different case with Tyrese Halliburton, but he's very, very good, and they did it through shrewd trades to get to that point. But you need those A-level guys to have some serious winning. Jalen Brunson invested in by the New York Knicks. Anthony Edwards, a number 1 overall pick, and then the entire cavalcade of the Oklahoma City Thunder. All of that was investment, was finding a guy and then building around him, someone who is A-level, top of the line. That's what this Jazz team needs.
You find yourself cheering for the T-Wolves because of all the ex-Jazz guys on the roster?
I root for good basketball.
That's it. That's all you want.
That's it.
Well, I mean, I know how much you've been grinding on tape for the draft. So I just wonder how much space you have left for actual NBA basketball.
I watch both. I'm thinking about both. When I went to see Dylan and Ace in person,
I know you did.
Gumshoeing.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Okay, driving from Philly to Piscataway, New Jersey. Everybody knows I'm putting in the effort. I'm thinking about the next level. Always.
I know you are. All right, we'll call it because I've taken us to the top of the hour. I've got to get to the 5 o'clock hour live coming up next.
Of course.
Roundball Roundup, all the great projects. Where can they find them?
Roundball Roundup, UtahJazz.com. Just search Utah Jazz Podcast Network. You'll be able to find it and then catch the Royals next week, Friday, Racing Louisville on KMYU. Your local listings for that.
Are you caught up on Friends and Neighbors?
Yes, I'm completely. I watched it all.
You did?
It's awesome.
I'm only 1 episode deep.
You need a John Hamm on your basketball team. You need a John Hamm in your TV series. He's back.
I like it.
I am in.
I love it. I'm going to go watch it tonight. Great to see you, buddy. JP, John Paul Chunga, voice of the Royals, the Stars, and also host of the Roundball Roundup podcast. Most notably and importantly, a founder and former producer of this radio show. JP stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you'll put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn. And you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program. Everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA, at IFA.coop. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Live coming up next before we say goodnight at 6 right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Tuesday afternoon style, 7 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. A gorgeous day, 77 degrees, 78 degrees, sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We have hot conditions and temps this week. It'll cool down a little bit next week. Ironically enough, as we're about to turn our calendars to June, and as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass, producing the show, booking the show today. Commute home on a Tuesday afternoon starts right now. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Hope you had a great one. Hope you had some time off and got outside and enjoyed the beautiful weather that we had over the past few days. We were off yesterday. It's great to be back on air today. We are just under an hour away from tip-off in Indianapolis, where the New York Knicks are looking to deadlock the series at 2 games apiece after a big boy win on Sunday, man, after a big gut check win coming back on the road. Oilers are looking to take a 3-1 series lead at home tonight. They've won 10 of the last 12 home games. They're 20-3 at home in the playoffs since 2017 as they welcome in the Dallas Stars. 5 o'clock hour of the program is brought to you by Advanced Window Products, our good friends at Advanced Window Products, where you can get $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Great local Salt Lake company operated by our guy Nate Orchard, Ute legend, mayor of Sac Lake City, his buddy Jake Weber. Great families, great people. They are here to help you. If you are looking to get your windows replaced as the weather gets really, really warm, today's the day to call Advanced Window Products. Now, if you think you're going to be in the market for window replacement in the next few months, maybe you're selling a home, or maybe you want to wait before the weather gets cold, if you call today, you're going to lock in the savings by just getting on the schedule. $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Give them a call at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100. Or visit advancedwindows.com, our good buddies. All right, some breaking news. Aaron Nesmith is available to play tonight for the Indiana Pacers after spraining his ankle during Game 3. The Pacers are a 2.5-point favorite to beat the Knicks tonight. So this is a series where we talked about it at the start. I feel like home court was going to be paramount in OKC, Minnesota. Of course, Oklahoma City got one on the road last night to take that 3-1 lead. I'm not sure Minnesota can beat them in their building. But this series, Indiana and New York, both these two teams have shown tremendous ability to play well on the road. The Knicks are 6-1 on the road in the playoffs. All 6 of those games have been decided by 6 points or less. And Indiana has been really good away from home as well. So I don't really have a lean as far as this game goes. As a Knick fan, I'm not confident at all. I would pick the Pacers to win the game. The Nesmith injury does change things. He's been the primary defensive player on Jalen Brunson. So we'll see if Rick Carlisle goes with more Ben Shepherd off the bench, or maybe even a little Benedict Mathurin, former Arizona Wildcat, who's been bad in the playoffs but had a really good regular season. During Game 3, Tom Thibodeau actually showed everybody that he can be a bit adaptable and adjustable. He sat Josh Hart and started Mitchell Robinson. Josh Hart deserves a ton of credit for the way he played off the bench, grabbing 10 boards and a bunch of really big rebounds down the stretch. And he did find some minutes for his bench. Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright, former Ute, actually got off the bench and played pretty well defensively. Jalen's got to stay out of foul trouble. No other way to put that. And we'll see if Cat can look a little bit more engaged right off the bat as opposed to waiting until the fourth quarter, even though his fourth quarter was epic during Game 3. So NBA playoffs, of course, NHL playoffs tonight as well. NFL OTAs getting going. Kirk Cousins not present for the Atlanta Falcons. Aaron Rodgers apparently is inching closer and closer to letting the Pittsburgh Steelers know his future plans. And we are 95 days away from college football. So right now, a lot going on the program. If you missed Rafael Barlow from earlier, some good stuff, NBABigBoard.com on draft prospects that you can look at as far as being a Jazz fan. Lee Ellis stopped by live from Indianapolis. But coming up next, we'll talk some Jazz offseason. We'll talk some NBA prospects. We'll talk some playoff basketball as our guy Richard Smith rolls by. Don't forget, the NHL Western Conference Finals, Game 4, can be heard on our radio station between Edmonton and Dallas. And for the next Pacers game, you can find that on The Fan. We'll catch a break, and Smitty will stop by coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Got some NHL playoffs coming your way. Coming up on the other side of a quick break, the Oilers and the Stars live from Edmonton. 4 Utah Mammoth players are now gold medal winners as the United States of America won the World Championships for the first time since 1933. And then, of course, NBA playoff basketball tonight over on the Fan. It is the Pacers and the New York Knicks, where the Indiana Pacers are a 2.5-point favorite to win tonight at home and take a commanding 3-1 lead. All right, Porter, vibe check. Vibe check. Tip-off is in a couple of minutes. I will say this, and I agree with the assertion that just having the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals has been a lot of fun. And I've enjoyed watching these games. It's the first time I've, nervous watched anything in a long time. I nervous watch the Jazz when they're good. I like to, cheer for our local teams all the time. But I don't know, man. The Neesmith injury is not nothing. It really is not. We'll see if he starts. We'll see how many minutes he plays. If you watch the replay of his ankle roll, it actually wasn't very severe. He just kind of went over on it. We'll see. I would imagine Mitchell Robinson gets the start again for Josh Hart. If I asked you this, if I took Jalen and Kat off the table and said who needs to step up on offense for the Knicks outside of their 2 stars the most, give me a third guy you're looking for tonight.
I think it's Mikal Bridges.
I agree.
Yep. I don't know that it should be, but it is Mikal Bridges because of what he's shown us. His mid-range game, his ability to kind of keep up space against defenders like Pascal Siakam and the length that Indiana has. I go with Bridges just because I think that when he is on, the addition his shooting makes, and here's the other thing, he's going to play 40-plus minutes. So if he's on, it's going to give you way, way more production than, if McBride is. So for me, I look at Mikal Bridges as not only does he need to be the Knicks' number 3, but he's got to be aggressive. He's got to be hitting that pull-up J that he did in the Celtics series. And, man, if we could get a few corner threes out of him a game, it's huge for the Knicks spacing and for Jalen Brunson's operation as well. That's kind of where I look, but ultimately I think it's going to be a by committee approach.
You still have confidence? I talked to you 4 hours ago when we started the show. As we say goodnight, you still think New York can get this done?
I think so, man. We're getting into the point of this series, right? We're 7 games in, we're several series in, and these coaches are to a point now where they kind of know what the other guy's going to try, and there's starting to be a little bit of the gamesmanship. There's starting to be a little bit of the back and forth of, all right, I'm going to maybe throw this out. I'm going to try something that Rick Carlisle hasn't seen on film, or vice versa. We're starting to see a little bit of that in this series. That's when it gets really interesting, really fun. And we may learn a lot about what the rest of the series looks like tonight. And like I said the last time, whoever wins tonight's going to probably, most likely, I think, win the series.
Don't let us win game 4. As I continue to say, don't let us win game 4. Go back to the Garden. Although, as I said earlier, with these 2 teams, home court is not near as paramount as it is with OKC. That's just my opinion. All right, let's get out of here. Time to watch some basketball and some puck tonight. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the program?
Yeah, already halfway through the work week on a Wednesday. Tim McMahon stops by, the NBA Daily Assist on a Wednesday. Neil Smith talking some puck, former NHL Stanley Cup winner. Jason Christ stops by for RSL. And then Chris Camerani, entire hour with CK in studio to finish out the show.
All right, that'll be a good Wednesday program, and we will say goodnight for this Tuesday show. And a special thank you to Rafael Barlow, Lee Ellis, Richard Smith, and our guy JP, John Paul Chung. Always good to see him. For any of the sound that you may have missed from the program today, website's an option, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do, in our space for every afternoon, 4 hours, check out the podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It actually helps out. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Tuesday evening. Enjoy some hockey and some hoops. We'll talk to you on a Wednesday show. And as always, you can catch it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.